UBC, inspiring Uganda. UBC, inspiring Uganda. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Today we have a special edition, especially looking at the Women's Month. 8th March, we come to celebrate the ladies in our lives. Aunties, uncles, grandparents, all of them, we get to celebrate them. In this country, we have milestones we have made in the women's lives in this country, both in leadership or in the different spheres that they're leading in. But also the biggest conversation has always been the affirmative action. How far have we gone? What achievements have we made? What milestones as a country have we made? Or what are the biggest challenges that we still have as a country, especially in investing, uplifting, and accelerating the ladies in this life? The girls, the women, all those involved in this country, how far have we done it? But today, I will not be the host of the show. Today, it will be someone special to be able to host this show and give us some of those details. But before I get to that, you can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel and drop your comment there about what we're discussing here, or the number 0709 62 25 92 there. You can also go to our X platform there and be able to drop your comment, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Today, the show will be hosted by Dr. Sarah Birete, who is the Executive Director for Center for Constitutional Governance in this country. Dr. Sarah, good evening, and now I hand over this special edition of Behind the Headlines to you.
Thank you, Timothy, and good evening, viewers and listeners. We are coming to you right from UBC Studios at Parliament Avenue, and with me are very special women, and I call this a power panel. A special panel to commemorate Women's Day for 2024 under the theme, Invest in Women to Accelerate Progress. Our specific topic tonight is the question, is empowering women through investment a catalyst for development? And with me in the studios are powerful women actors from the economic sector of Uganda, and right from my left is Madam Emma Mugisha. She's the Executive Director, Stanbic Bank. So we have all the money we need with us on this panel and the financial interventions. You're welcome, Madam Mugisha.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Next to Madam Mugisha is Madam Olive Birungi Rumonya. I hope I pronounced it well.
That's right.
Madam Birungi is the Deputy Executive Director for the Civil Aviation Authority. So we have the civil aviation industry in the house, and we shall know about women spaces in that field.
Good evening, viewers.
Thank you. And the next to Madam Olive is a powerful member of parliament, strong women activist, the one and only Honorable Sarah Achengo Pendi. She's the current chairperson for UOPA and the woman MP for Tororo District. You're welcome, Honorable Sarah Pendi.
Good evening, viewers. A pleasure being here.
You've been shaking expensive tables lately, and you will tell us about those tables. And on the extreme left is another namesake of mine. This panel is dominated by Sarah's and my friend, Madam Sarah Kajingo. She's the Vice Chairperson of the Private Sector Foundation. You're welcome to this show, Madam Sarah Kajingo.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for having me.
And tonight, as we delve into this debate, the climax of the women empowerment journey was the Beijing platform in 1995, and through the Women Empowerment Plan of Action, we had 12 areas of concern. Among those areas was the issue of women empowerment. And from that time, it has been 28 years. 20 years ago, the Maputo Protocol was also enacted, and the provisions under Article 13 and 19 of the Maputo Protocol are specific on women economic empowerment. And having started with the legislative bias, I will straight away go to Honorable Sarah Pendit, usher us into this debate. From the Beijing Platform of Action, from the Maputo Protocol, from the enactment of affirmative action in our own constitution 28 years ago, where are we today on the legislative agenda for women empowerment?
First, I must appreciate the government, the NRM government, because following the Beijing Plan of Action, and of course the CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the government of Uganda, in enacting the new constitution of 1995, ensured that some of those issues that were raised at those forums were actually included in our constitution. And of course, in the constitution is where we derive our strength as the women of this country, because the constitution ensured that it provided, this provision that women should be included, first of all, in all decision-making bodies, constitutional bodies, but also ensuring that at least even the political space, which originally was not an area that women ventured into. So there was special recognition of the role of women, and of course, following that, then we had these affirmative action seats that were created. Because of societal, the way society perceives women, it has been a complicated space for women to contest with men and win these seats. So I want to appreciate that these affirmative action, the affirmative action seat actually brought women into the political space and created those special seats. And following that, even at the local government level, they've ensured that at least 1/3 of the councillors at district and sub-county level are women. Equally, that's not all. In constituting boards, of course, sometimes the people constituting these boards are men. So in constituting boards, they've ensured that at least 1/3 of the positions are actually reserved for the women. So you find 9, at least 3 women. Although sometimes you find they forget about this and it's only men. I remember a board, I think it was for electricity generation company. When I joined the Ministry of Energy, I found all the board members were actually men. And even in constituting the NSSF board, this was last year, cabinet, I think, was it cabinet? I don't remember, but they passed the board with only just 1 woman out of the 9. And when I raised this matter on the floor of the House, that board had to be put aside, and of course, a new women included. So I must say, by and large, that the government has ensured that at least that is done. But even also on the economic side, they've ensured that we have programs that come in to benefit the women, because the women still have challenges in accessing credit facilities from the banks because they lack collateral, they don't own land. So I am one person that greatly appreciates the parish development model, because previously government has been sending funding using different avenues like the Uganda Women's Entrepreneurship Program. This money was being sent, but it was ending up there at the district level. So if a rural woman who knows who cannot get to the district found it difficult to actually access credit. And yet we know that women today are involved, engaged in different businesses at different levels. So I want to say that we have the necessary policies, the necessary legal frameworks that support the women in this country in different areas and different ways.
Thank you so much. I'm coming to you next, Madam Olive Birungi. How best can women thrive in leadership? And how is the space like in the aviation industry for career growth for women?
Okay, thank you very much. I must say that we are still few women at the top level in leadership, not only in the aviation industry, but in the corporate world as we have it. So there are some of the things that we have done deliberately or we need to be doing, which we think are still lacking with the women. One of them, if you look at the aviation sector, the top positions, the technical areas, women only remain in that level. But the decision making is actually in the boardroom. The decision making is by the CEOs. So when we don't have many women on the high table to make decisions, it will be a very uphill task to have more women into that aviation industry. When we go to the other sectors, not only aviation, because I've been in the corporate world for a very, very long time, I think we still have a challenge of having many women having clarity of purpose from an early stage of life. Because you don't become a leader all of a sudden, you grow into leadership. So what we need to do, we need to ensure that every woman at a certain stage of growth, maybe from the year of 25 or 20, has a very clear clarity of purpose of career growth. And I'm giving this because there are times where we have changed jobs and somebody will change a job. And the reason for the change of a job is because of better salary, better benefits. Is that the clarity of purpose? If you're intending to be a leader, you must be able to know that if I change this job, I'm changing this job because I want to build my career path. I'm an example. There's a job, I left a very good job, well-paying job, and moved into another job, which was SOS Children's Villages, Uganda. And my movement there gave me an opportunity into the CEO position. Why? Because right now in the corporate world, you'll find that when the MD is out of office, the two people who act are either the legal, corporation secretary, or director finance. So we need to recognize that very early and have a clarity of purpose in order to move. The other one, which I can say, which is very, very necessary, is creating the networks and servicing them. It is very clear that you may have the best CV, you may have the PhD, you may have the knowledge, you may have the experience and expertise, but there will be a network that will actually contact you and tell you that there's this opportunity in such an area. So when you don't have the networks, as women, we lose out on these opportunities because opportunities as you go up the ladder, especially the boardroom, the top leadership, these are not always in the newspapers that you'll find it. So where is your network? Where is the group of people you associate with? So we have to deliberately do that. One of the other area that I can mention, which I've seen very, very visible, issues, fear of balancing work, family, and the job. Because as you grow into the leadership, you serve on several boards, you have a job, you have a family, you have a husband. That fear of balancing becomes a challenge and it stifles women from going up into the leadership, which means that we have to be very innovative. An example I can give on my side, one of the things that I think can work, is placing your family activities, important activities, to be part and parcel of your diary. So if I opened my diary right now, my diary that has all the Civil Aviation Authority, all the other boards where I serve, you'll find my visiting days of my children in that diary. That way you're able to know that you cannot miss out on that opportunity. The other one, we are gifted in Africa with the extended family. So you need to service the extended families, the sisters, the brothers, because when time comes, hard times will always come. I think you'll find yourself chairing a board and you have a sports day for your daughter. How do you manage to turn around that. So if you have the extended family that is close to you and close to your family, they will come in handy to support you. The other one, which is critical, because there's a time when we used to say, you know, men will not allow their women to grow into leadership because it is a threat. But you need to engage them, because as you change jobs, and I can give my example, sit with them and tell them that I'm moving to this job, discuss it. And that way they will work with you. So if you have to work 24 hours a day without them seeing you, they will have participated into your change of job or career. So for me, there are some of those that I think have been challenges for women to go up the ladder. And another time, and the other bit is our CV. I can tell you we need to grow our CVs in a very diverse manner. If you've been a student of mass communication, why would I do a master's in mass communication today? I should be able to have a CV, because right at the top of leadership, you're looking at a diverse experience. You're looking at somebody who is knowledgeable in HR, finance, audit, and all other areas. That's when you can actually manage to run an institution. So that clarity needs to be done and looked at right from the start in order to encourage more women to actually play in that role successfully. Thank you.
Thank you very much, but you haven't told us about the aviation space. Is the competition very tight for women, or the space is open?
The space, I could say the space is very competitive. Because if you look at in Africa right now, at the top level, we could be about 8 women at that level. So last year, we have launched what we call the Africa Aviation Association. It's the first one in Africa, and I'm the vice chair for that association. We are putting in place deliberate ways of increasing women into aviation sector. And if you look also, we have space actually, right from the lower level, aeronautical engineers and other roles, but there are no women to enter those positions. Because I think for a long time, many women hovered around art subjects. So you find that there's a big gap of having women who can come into the aviation sector. So one of the things we are doing with that is the Africa Women in Aviation, we are trying to go to the schools, right from the primary, secondary schools, university institutions, to try and encourage as many women, young girls, to join. Because with aviation, it must start from the girl level, primary, secondary, when they make choices on what subjects to do. So if we don't have many girls or women coming up after A level with subjects that enable them to enter the aviation sector, we'll lose out on that. So part of the strategies that we are doing, and this, I think we are getting bigger. Next week we are doing another one, is to try and create resources. We have been able to get financial support, and we are going to give scholarships in the aviation sector. If you go to the top of leadership, there is that gap which is big. And as I said, if you're not on that table where decisions are made, where budgets are made, where discussions are made, it will be very hard to make that change. So in the Africa Women in Aviation, that's one of the things that we are focusing on.
Thank you very much. Coming to you, Madam Mujisha, the credit and finance industry. Most of women interventions that we see are concentrated on the micro as opposed to macroeconomic interventions. Microeconomic interventions are like covering up the wound without treating an injury. How can we enable credit access for women entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Sarah. And maybe before I get into that difficult question, I just wanted to say thank you to Honorable Sarah and the government. I'm a product of affirmative action. I think my year was the first girls to get 1.5 points at university. So I was able to get my first choice because of that. I remember when we were still in secondary school, we were like, we don't need that. But when the results came, we were the first ones to add the 1.5. But then again, for my master's, I managed to get a scholarship with the Netherlands Embassy or the Netherlands government because I was a young African woman and got a full scholarship for my MBA. So I totally believe in affirmative action. Let's continue. We can still push more women, and to be able to get to the executive director of Stanbic with that background, I am a child of affirmative action.
Wow.
So coming to the tough question of most of the interventions at the micro level, what are we doing at the macro level for women to get into finance? Of course, there's the bigger picture where we're looking at, or where the statistics tell us, for example, that women are better payers, women are more committed to their strategies than the men. So it makes financial sense for us as banks to actually make sure that we serve women. Interestingly, if you look at the large businesses, we do have quite a number of women as our customers, and we serve them, but they're not as many as we'd like them to be. And that is probably because, again, women have felt more comfortable running smaller business. When it comes to growing them to bigger business, it takes a lot more courage. But also the structural differences where you actually don't probably have property, or don't have land, or don't have the property that the bank is asking for.
In terms of security.
In terms of security. I lead the business banking team at Stanbic, and some of our largest customers are actually women. We have some fantastic women doing logistics, doing tour and travel, doing manufacturing. Actually, we have quite a number of manufacturers as well. But they're not as large as the businesses that some of the gentlemen have. And so there's a process we need to go through. My first thing the one thing we need to do is include financial literacy in everything that we do. Because that process of making the money, saving it, investing it, creating wealth is something we're not taught in school. It's something we stumble in even as we start to make money. Even in when you come to different business entrepreneurs, you actually start from the first fundamentals of financial literacy. Someone may be very good at selling what they do, but when it comes to saying, COVID taught us that even businesses need to have reserves. You should be able to run for some months even without earning. So how are we making your business plan such that you actually start to build these reserves? We've got a big issue in construction, where, let's say, the government is the biggest employer of construction. If they've delayed in payment, if you don't have a reserve, you won't be able to pay your loans, and as such, any profit that you had in your business runs out. So structurally, I think we need to have that financial literacy in our processes, in everything that we do. So as a banker, I can't be a good banker for you if I don't speak to you about financial literacy and financial management and building reserves for your business. However, again, we can't overemphasize the micro again, because it's the micro business that become larger businesses. So if you've started these practices at the micro level, then you'll be able to build a bigger business. At Stanbic, we've got a product for women, specifically product for women that we call Stanbic for Her. It's not just at the micro level, it's all the way through to the larger businesses. What we found is that women are not just looking for cheap credit or credit without collateral. Women are also looking for market. Women are looking to network. Women are looking to learn. Women are looking to look at, why should I have health insurance for my children? Because I may have a very good business, but if my child gets sick, the hospital bills can wipe out this business. And you're not going to leave money in the business and not take your child to hospital. So why should I make sure I have health insurance for my family? And then creating the products that are affordable. Because if you think about it, on a normal day, you don't need a lot of money for health insurance. But you need enough to keep you and your family safe, so that when something happens, you can quickly go to the hospital, have that sorted, and not have to look for money. But then you talk about investments. What are the alternative investment options that as a woman you have? Even as I run my business, where else can I invest such that I have that money on the side should I need it to reinvest back into my business. That reserve. So we talk about, you know, government securities, unit trust, all these other investment options that are available for the woman, but for also the entrepreneur. So those are some of the things that we have done. And it's not just Stanbic that has created it. A women's program, a number of banks have realized that this is important, and we do have a number of products in the market. But what's also very key is creating that space for networking. Talking about digitization, how is digitization going to help you accelerate your business? How is networking going to help you accelerate your business? Again, like you've said, being mothers and all the things we have to do, you find that networking becomes difficult. So they say all the deals are made on the golf course. I've been planning to play golf for the longest time and I've still failed. So how do you get in that space where the deals are made if you're not on the golf course? Again, you have to create the spaces where women are comfortable to join in the networking and be able to build their businesses. And lastly, learning. We have to continuously learn and improve on the skills that we have. And these days we have all the material that you have on internet. If you go to YouTube, there's a full university. You don't even have to pay. Any subject you put in, there will be a TED Talk, there will be a podcast. If you don't want to read, someone will read it for you while you're driving in the car.
Yeah.
So learning is important for us to be able to build businesses to a bigger space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You've reminded me, whenever I'm tired, I do audiobooks.
Yeah.
And they can, yes, they can freely usher you to a good night's sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm coming to you, Sarah, and it was tactical to bring you in at the end. You have a big sector that you lead, the Private Sector Foundation, and there are a lot of creative programs for women, including the Grow program that I want you to tell leaders about, and more initiatives. So what are the opportunities for women in the from the Private Sector Foundation?
Thank you, Sarah. First, Private Sector Foundation is the apex body for the private sector in Uganda. We represent over 300 business associations and a combined 2.5 million businesses across a range of 13 sectors, including manufacturing, tourism, professional services, which I represent, agribusiness, logistics, the non-traditional one, the creatives. And so at PSFU, we understand that women need to be handheld. But before I get into that, Uganda's women are very entrepreneurial. But yet we face several challenges. The informal sector of businesses is dominated by women-owned businesses. Most of the women's businesses are not formalized, they're not registered. What that means, therefore, is that they miss out on opportunities to export, to partner, to access affordable finance. And so, through a number of initiatives, we have been partnering with government. One, you have seen us over the last 2 years partnering with government on integration of markets, penetration of markets, and there is a big opportunity, the African Continental Free Trade Area, which has over 1 billion big marketplace that women as well as the rest of the Ugandan business community can access. But we need to organize ourselves first. Women are entrepreneurs. So at PSFU, we are seized with, one, ensuring that businesses are formalized. Two, and we thank government for that, that during the budgeting process, they adopt over 75% of our business proposals. And during the bad times of the pandemics and locusts and everything, they adopted our proposal on a deferral for payment of taxes. But, of course, the majority of the big businesses are dominated not by women. And so, with our valued partners, MasterCard Foundation, we are partnering on their strategic goal to create dignified and fulfilling jobs, because it's one thing to have a job, it's another for it to be dignified for the youth and especially women. Over 30 million jobs before 2030. And how are we going about that? We have lead farm structures at PSFU through who we partner to create these jobs. And we are scientific about this. They are not simply grants, but we follow up scientifically. We have a tracking system to find out which number of jobs have been created within which period of time. 2, business development services. How do you keep your accounts? Are you able to brand your product? Are you able to market? But also, businesses cannot access markets without certification. So, over the last few years, through our partnership with MasterCard Foundation, we have enabled over 500 products of SMEs, majority women, to get the certification of Uganda National Bureau of Standards. Even here in Uganda, you can't sell your product in a supermarket without that certification. 2, now under GROW, which is a World Bank funded project co-implemented by government with the private sector foundation, specifically to scaling women-owned businesses from micro to small and to medium, and who knows, they could grow to top African brands. Recently, we signed a number of partnerships with MDS, the Uganda Industrial Research Institute, where women's businesses will be incubated, but that women will also be trained. If you are engaged in mushrooms and you would like to add value, or you produce soap, or you like to take it a digital notch higher, get involved in robotics, those facilities are at Uganda Industrial Research Institute. The cost of training, the cost of accommodation, in case you would like to go to Namamve or Nakawa, which are some of the facilities of Uganda Industrial Research Institute, that cost will be borne by the project. But 2, again with UNBS now under GROW, we intend to enable more products of women to be certified. And during the Women's Day on the 8th of March, we are going to unveil a number of partnerships. For example, Uganda Registration Services Bureau has been running commendably mobile registration clinics to formalize women's businesses, but not every woman deserving is reached. So through GROW and through our partnership, PSFU partnership with URSB, we are going to scale mobile registration of businesses across the country and therefore have more businesses into the formal sector. The other one, we have been running in partnership with MasterCard Foundation a women's Katale, which we started in 2022 in Luero, where we had 100 women turn up and they showcase their products free of charge. The second one was last year here at Lugogo, where we had over 250 women come in, and several women reported that they were able to ink some deals, they were able to sell, they learned. This year's Women's Katale, we are taking to the venture capital of Uganda, Jinja City. It will take place at the Rugby Union grounds. Free of charge, every woman, you don't have to be deterred by family, young children. We shall have a creche where you can go and take care of your baby. We shall have business clinics led by industry leaders. We shall also have a one-stop center where we have URA to enable women understand taxation, URSB to register your business, but also to network. UNBS will be there. But at a macro level, we continue to engage. For example, the one thing we pick for women, why they fear to formalize businesses, is that they know the moment you get registered and you have a trade name, the next thing you'll be asked for a TIN number. The next thing will be taxes, estimates. They are so scared, paying rent, so many things. So at that level, we continue to engage URA to change their focus from cutthroat enforcement to hand-holding businesses, especially those of women. And we are happy to report that URA is indeed now focusing their efforts onto tax education and to hand-holding businesses. So the other one we do, of course, is ready businesses, including those of women, for them to be export-ready, phytosanitary certifications, which are paid for, and under GROW, those costs will be now borne by that project. So the future of women is brilliant. We have made so many strides. There was a time a woman would not even speak in public. But we now speak. We are here, quite a number of women, speaking for quite big topics. We, like she said, we had the 1.5 points to join university. Some of our colleagues who had been to the good traditional schools did not need it. But again, many of the other women, it helped. You could miss university by just 1.5 points. The policies that created the Ministry of Gender, the policies that ensured that women are given these spaces, so much that now we are even beginning to discuss the quality of women's output. So those are many strides. But the woman out there in the village needs to make some money. When you're educated, when you are making money running your businesses, you're able to make the right choices. So for me, I am proud of the strides we have made as women in this country. But as a mother of both boys and girls, I look to a balanced world, and which is why at Private Sector Foundation, we partner with UNDP to ensure that many companies in Uganda are moving towards gender equality. We actually go in there, train, and study if you are actually adopting to gender equality, and we recognize you at a very big ceremony. But also engendering workplaces. Women may fail to report to work because the baby is sick. But if companies now, and we are encouraging them, set up a creche, set up a baby care center, so that a woman doesn't have to run home when their house help has also maybe taken a holiday. They're able to take care of their children, but also grow companies, grow organizations, contribute to leadership.
Thank you very much, sir, and you've ushered into a tax debate, and I will go to our legislator on the panel. Majority of our taxes are indirect taxes, and by nature of indirect taxes, they are consumptive. We pay them as we consume. And as a result, they target individuals who are most burdened. And the big, the people who play in the biggest league can easily get away with the tax, avoidance and through these loopholes. How can we change our tax regime to ensure that it favors women empowerment, especially given the fact that the women economic liberation is directly linked to poverty reduction, and our barriers are in some of these challenges like tax policies and trade policies?
Difficult question.
But not difficult for you.
Yeah, I must state really that, of course, when it comes to taxation, normally the less privileged, when especially you have the indirect taxes, we look at them as I mean, they have no way of escaping. They have to consume the products that are of necessity, and of course, in a way, they must actually pay the taxes. But one thing that I want to tell Ugandans, that it is actually good for every Ugandan to engage in some productive activity so that they can be able to generate some income to better their lives, but also contribute to national development. Our constitution does not actually create this, you know, what can I say? It puts all of us in the same bracket. When you look at the state principles laid out in our constitution and the directives, it actually talks about government, the state creating this enabling environment where everybody shall participate or everybody shall get involved in the development of the country. So it's a good thing for people to pay taxes so that government can actually provide the necessary services that we all want to see. For example, the roads. This cannot be a private sector-led service. The health sector, the education sector. When you move in developed countries, you find that most of these services, like in the education and health sector, are completely free. But of course, not free as in free, because actually you contribute to them. You think they are free, but you contribute the tax. And of course, they are well managed. And this is the state where we want to all go to. When you look at the health sector, the majority of the consumers of the health services are actually women and children. So it would be a good thing for us to actually contribute to the development of this country, but also provide the necessary resources so that government can provide the taxes. So I want to state that I think it would actually create another level of complaint from the men if we came up with, you know, specific tax regimes to benefit the women. Already there is this whole complaint that a lot of focus is on the women and the girl child, and we have forgotten about the boy child. I don't want to really, for me, I wouldn't want, if we are saying that there is gender, we are yearning for gender equality. So let us ensure that we provide this enabling environment and give the women the necessary resources that they need so that they can be able to engage in productive activities, so that they can be able to get into the necessary businesses, but also pay the taxes equally with the others. I don't want to create this regime, you know, favoring women. Actually, it would create, I think, at the end of the day, it may be the reason why the men have taken a back stage. When you go to the villages now, go to the communities, it is the women who are taking care of the families. A role that initially was for the men, and the women were providing a supportive role. The men have abandoned that. I was in a beam just last week. I think most of you could have seen this lady whose husband, you know, pierced the eye with a spear, and it remained in the eye.
Yes.
So we went to a beam, and we actually were fortunate that this lady came to the community meeting where we were, and she narrated her story.
Has she recovered?
Yes, she has recovered.
Oh my God.
We thank God for that. And the story was that this lady was actually the breadwinner in the home. And the husband would get up to just go and play chess, Ludo, and drink alcohol at the trading center and come back home. So she told the husband, why don't you also engage in some business? I'm tired of working alone. And that was actually the beginning of the fight at home. And this woman told us she had 6 million shillings out of her businesses, you know, she buys produce, sells, she had 6.4 million. And was, I think the conversation was like, they were discussing where to invest.
With the husband?
With the husband, where to invest. And then a disagreement arose. But she also then tasked the husband, you also work, this is my sweat.
Put money.
And after that incident, he beat her up, and of course, it ended up with that spear, and the man ran away with the money. The 6.4 million shillings.
Very sad.
But I also want to use this opportunity to appeal to the women out there. Do not keep money at home. Why do you keep money under the bed, in the pots, wherever you keep them? Take the money to the bank.
Not just money,
So
land titles also.
So if the money was in the bank, I mean, this would not have a reason. And she has children that are supposed to be in school. The children are still at home. They cannot go to school. So I think what we need is access to credit. What we need is, you know, information. What we need is to encourage women to register their businesses. What we need is to ensure that we provide the necessary services, because even at the end of the day, when the women engage in this, you know, they're into agriculture and all that, they will need markets for their produce. So they need to know where to sell their produce. They need to know how to access these markets. Of course, she was talking about the opportunities at the continental level.
Yeah.
How are we using that opportunity? Have we given in this information to the women? So information to me is power. We need to empower our women with the necessary information. And I must appreciate, I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. I think it has done a lot in ensuring that businesses are registered, and a number of women's businesses have been registered. And there is now also online registration. Previously, one had to travel, get to URSBS physically, but now everything can actually be done online, and wherever you are, register your businesses. So I want to encourage women, register your businesses. But also, as I said, stop keeping money under the beds. We've seen some of them, by the way, when they are engaged in these businesses, you know, they have the circles. But those are also a problem. I've got cases recently, this parish development model. Women got money, they started businesses, then they have these circles, and they were keeping the money in the circles. And where is the circle bank? It is in somebody's house in a box.
Okay.
And these boxes, people have disappeared with millions. I have a case that is in court in Tororo. A man decided to, you know, go, and he disappeared with the money. I don't, there were about 23 million.
So there's a need to teach women about banking.
Yes, banking. They must, and let's find ways of having these banks closer also to the people, because that's also another thing.
The mobile clinics.
Yes, mobile banks, they should be, find a way of, you know, previously, I think, I remember when I was still growing up, I'm still growing though. And I was there, Stanbic, I think it was Uganda Commercial Bank, I don't know whether it's the UCB, they would move with their mobile vans to the villages, and then people take their money, they drive away with it. So these are things that should be done. If the bank cannot be stationed in some rural place, they could have this maybe weekly, you know, mobile banks moving. People bank, those who want to withdraw, and life goes on. So access.
Yeah, that would be nice on market days. The bank will tell us.
Yeah. So these are some of the things that can be really done.
But Honorable, before I come to Madame Birungi, we have a big digital divide, gender digital divide in Africa. Lack of access to internet in Uganda. There is a number that does not access internet are women. What could be done to bridge that gap?
Of course, what can be done, that is actually a big problem. So what we need to see is that the players in the market, those responsible for the internet services should ensure that now we have, you know, the networks available everywhere. Because I want to appreciate that some 5-10 years ago, you'd not find smartphones in the villages. Today when you go there, everybody has tried to have a smartphone. And I want to appreciate the telecom companies, because what they have also done, you can actually acquire a smartphone in an easy way by, you know, paying something weekly over 3 months period. And these phones are as cheap as 100,000, and many people have actually had
There are
access to them.
higher purchase services.
Yes, yes. You pick a smartphone and you pay weekly. Actually, they deduct. You don't even feel it. As you load the airtime or mobile, you know, money on your mobile phone, it is actually deducted. So you don't feel it. So this has enabled many people to actually have the smartphones. But what we need to see is that there is, you know, steady access to internet, because that remains a challenge. In some communities, it is off and on. The other day, we moved to West Niles. There are some parts that you're completely cut off. Some other parts, even in my district, there are places where you can't access networks. So this is something that I think there must be a deliberate effort by the government to ensure that the internet is available. But of course, it is a paid-for service. It's not something that you like in other countries where you go and wherever you are, you have access to internet for free. So it's a paid-for service, but people know how to control it. Yeah.
Maybe Sarah could note a question for us as a communications expert. How can we bring down our cost of internet? Because Uganda's cost of internet is among the highest in East Africa.
I think it has
just if you can note it down when I come to you. So, Madam Birungi, you are, as a player at the African continent, you are vice chair of the Aviation Authority, and I'm looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is aimed at boosting inter-regional trade in Africa, including women, encouraging women participation. But I know the Aviation Authority or the air, you know, the airlines industry benefits better in the intra-regional trade and the rest. But I want to come to you on the agreement itself. It assumes that men and women, rich and, you know, from rich and poor countries, urban and rural areas, educated and uneducated, would benefit the same way from this free continental trade area. It does not provide for the, you know, the realities of life and experiences of women in different contexts. How can we bridge this gap to ensure that women from all categories, from all walks of life, have an equal chance at benefiting from the Africa Free Continental Trade Area?
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. You're very right. There is no way we can say that women from all regions, from all economic levels will benefit at the same level. Yeah. That is not possible. And actually, if that's what we have, it's one way of saying that a few will benefit and others will never benefit. So I think there must be a deliberate action. One, I think we need to segment the groups, the different categories of women in their levels of economic level, education, the businesses they are playing in, and all other levels. And then come up with strategies for each particular group. For example, if we are looking at education and we are saying we have those that are illiterates or those that are educated up to university, those at masters, what do we need to do for each? Because you can't use the same shoe fits all and achieve what we intend to do. So for me, I think the first one, we need to segment and see what level do we have. We'll have situations where we'll find the women who are already doing well, who know what they need to do, to become mentors, to mentor the different groups of women to fully understand how they can be able to benefit. The other one is the governments. It's a government thing. We need to come up with the policies or whatever plans they are, which deliberately tap into every single group of women. That way we'll be able to achieve. Otherwise, leaving it that it will fit every single woman at the same level, that is not possible. We all understand it differently. You'll find that I can afford, I am running a big business, another one is in an informal sector. And I think for me that is still a challenge. The other bit which really gives me sleepless nights, if you look at women, where are we playing? I think the numbers show 60% are in the informal sector. 60% in the informal sector. And when we go to the serious issues of environment that are happening right now, I think I read somewhere where I think a statement was raised that in the next few years, 20 years or so, the women might again slump back in the poverty levels because they are playing in a field where they are at 60% in the informal sector. The largest of that is in agriculture, and yet the environment challenges that are happening are in that area. So every category needs to be looked at in a different way in order to be able to move into that direction. And when you talk of the region, we will say that yes, we have achieved a lot. Women have moved. I remember I saw the numbers saying just in decision making, senior management, the numbers between 2012 and now have increased from 21 to 32%. But when we go to the recent Fortune 500 of 2023, only 10% of women are running organizations. So when we go to the new ways of doing and saying how do we get all women in the same level, they must be segmented, and then strategies put in place for different groups of people. And I can add, Chair, here, I think I'm also a beneficiary, like they've said, from affirmative action.
Yes, all of us.
Okay, beneficiaries. And I must also say that I represented the young women to the World Women Conference in Beijing in 1995. And I presented some of the affirmative actions that we see today.
Wow.
And I was sponsored by the UNDP. So when we speak, and I always think and I always look back on what we put out there in Beijing, I also look at what I presented on behalf of this government for the girl child and where we are today. And I still feel, yes, we have achieved, but we still have a long way to go. Because it has been 48 years since the first, I think since the first conference took place in Mexico.
Yes.
Then what do we need to do if for 48 years we are looking at the 10% women in Fortune 500 and the percentages in boardrooms, apart from the House in Parliament where we have more activity in politics, how else are we going to do it in the next 40 years to come in order to change the status quo or improve the numbers? So I think for me, as you said, we still have a journey.
Yeah.
It has to be deliberate. As the Honorable said, we need to it's a partnership between men and women. Women cannot go it alone and succeed, because the people who are in the driving seat right now, actually the men are the majority. So we need to partner with them, show them the reason why we need, for example, to segment in order for them to benefit in the new laws or rules that are coming into the region. So for me, that's how I would look at that.
Yeah, it's indeed, we still have a journey to walk. It's good to keep challenging ourselves. Madam Mugisha, I'm coming to you right away. The Bretton Woods institutions have made it, sound like smart business to invest in women. It's smart business. And the slogan in the banking institutions is that we feel like, as women activists, we feel like you've turned us into an enterprise whereby you are saying in order to do smart business, you must be seen to invest in women. Women are 51% of the population in Uganda, 50.4% of the population in Africa. And at the global scale, we are at parity. It's 50-50, with a very slight difference, negligible difference. Why is it that we are just telling people, entrepreneurs, corporations, to be seen to invest in women? And there's a bit of the GROW project where it targets numbers. as much as GROW, and I'm using it as an example,
Yeah.
GROW is out to empower women in business, but it's looking at women in form of numbers. And so this in a way makes us a mere statistic, yet we are the majority population. How can we empower women beyond slogans?
Wow. Okay. To start with, it's actually true
Yeah.
that it's good business to deal with women.
Smart business.
It's smart business. And I want to give you a statistic of a project we did with Profira. Profira was a project in the Ministry of Finance funded by IFAD. So during COVID, we were looking for ways to get more involved in the community and be not bank only the big businesses and the rich, but also get to the grassroots. Obviously, we cannot get to the grassroots as well as the circles do. So we decided to set up a program to work with the circles. So we were looking at the big circles because we could relate a bit to what they're doing. But the village VSLAs, the ones who have their money in a box, we were fearing them as a bank, because how do you ask these people to move from a box to a bank? But we had
But they've moved from a mattress to a box.
they're moving. Okay. So we started a project, or we partnered with Profira at that time. They got $1 million from IFAD, and they were to give it to about 40 or 50 groups in 5 districts in northern Uganda. So we said, we restructured it, instead of giving to them as a grant, can we make it a revolving fund? And can we manage it as the bank? So that these groups see the bank, not the project. Because the developing world, when people see centers are fair, we don't have to pay back. But when it's a bank, then they have to make sure that they pay back. We looked at this same group of VSLAs 1 year afterwards. Their liabilities had grown from $1 million that was initially the revolving fund to $4 million. How is that not smart business to do? So we are now realizing that we don't, that we can actually do this as a bank. We don't need to fear the bottom of the pyramid, so to say.
Okay.
And the things that we went with was, one, digitization. Can we get away from this cash? So that money in the box, can we actually have agents around you that will turn that money into e-value, so that you stop putting money under the mattress, as we said. But also, we didn't want to destroy the idea of meeting, because that is what creates a VSLA. And that's what is the social pressure for you to pay back.
Yes.
So how do we create digitization, but with the same culture of meeting?
Yes.
And then the third thing was training, financial literacy, like I said.
Yes.
How does each member actually think through the money they're borrowing and how they're going to pay it back, and how to sustain that over the different seasons of whatever crop that they're growing. But then also on the back of that, how do we connect them into a value chain that will ensure that they will have market? So then there was value in the VSLA staying with the bank, because there were benefits that they were seeing. So I think for us not to look at the women as a statistic, is we need to give them value. We need to actually have programs and products that deliver value for the women. So that you get away from, as a bank, we measure our success on numbers.
Okay.
But now we're starting to look at impact.
Okay.
How many more jobs, how many more children are going to school? And that is a very interesting journey for us as bankers.
Thank you very much, Madam Mugishan. Thank you very much, our panelists. To the young women watching this show, you can see that the women are playing in the big league, and there's no reason for you to go small. Yes. Catch us in the next segment of this show. We are taking a break.
Fred!
Osmosis.
Freddy! Fred Dollar! My boss, CEO Inojo. the general of generals, the conqueror of conquerors, the first and the final, the sky above the skies, the promised land, the terms and the conditions, the international king crocodile, the source of the
Osmosis.
Nile.
I don't have money today.
Just take a polite loan of 200k to stock on my shop. The signs and symptoms of success. The bank commander, not the bank teller.
Why hassle for a loan when you've got MTN Momo? We're sorting. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from the different loan options from our partners and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable.
The government of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is calling upon all stakeholders such as the chief administrative officers, city mayors, resident city commissioners, city clerks, city and division councillors, wards and LC chairpersons, as well as the residents and business communities to cooperate with the UBOS field teams as we embark on advanced preparations to conduct the national Population and Housing Census on the 10th of May 2024. The census will be a 10-day exercise to obtain statistical data and information that will be used for planning and policy formulation, including information on 1. How many we are, 2. Where we are, 3. How we are living, 4. What we own, and 5. Where we access services from. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics has now started listing of households and mapping in the 11 cities of Arua, Fort Portal, Gulu, Hoima, Jinja, Lira, Mbale, Masaka, Mbarara, Soroti, and in the Greater Kampala comprising of Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono districts. For more information, please call 0755 342 128 or 0773 342 128. This message is brought to you by the Executive Director and Census Commissioner, Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Census 2024. It matters to be counted.
Nyati Motion Pictures brings you Tuko Pamoja, a documentary film about our unity as Ugandans and Africans.
Bunyoro would have simply created an East African community that we are looking for today.
The rulers of Bunyoro are actually Luos.
We people who live across the Nile, we are so related from our myth or from just the Nile.
We are the same people and genetically we are even the same people.
We are similar people.
We are one.
Pamoja, we are one.
Use that word, pamoja.
Premiering every week from 3rd February to June 2024 at the National Theatre and Indere Center. Daily screenings are from 4th February to June 2024 at Ham Cinemax and the National Theatre. To get a ticket, call 0778 787 660. Tuko pamoja?
Ebiseera by'okuzaayo abaana mu masomero tebiteekwa kukaluubiriza n'akatono. Eno kusimba nnyiriri mpanvu kano kalipagano ka bidduka. Simanya kuzunga na banka siripisi. Kati osobola okusasula school fees z'omwana wo ate n'okola n'ebirala ntoko ku ssimu ye ey'omu ngalo. Ekikola kyangu nnyo. Nyiga bunyezi *165*8 ogoberera ebikulagiriddwa oba okozese app ya MTN Momo. Ate kati okola ki olwaleero? MTN Mobile Money Uganda Limited erungamizibwa banka enkulu ya Uganda.
Nyati Motion Pictures brings you the Tuko Pamoja Atekere segment. How did they become Karamojong, Itesots, and Lango?
We are actually the brothers of Israelites.
When Lango people reached Karamoja, the Karamojong remained there. The Itesots proceeded.
Those were the youth.
The Karamojong said, no, we are going to die there.
And the elders cast them, Ites. So that is how the name Ateso comes from.
Premiering in March on Sunday 10th, 2024 at the National Theatre from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. To get a ticket, call 0778 787 660. Tuko pamoja?
Welcome back. We are back at UBC Behind the Headlines, straight to you from UBC Studios. With me in the studio, I still have Madam Sarah Kajingo, Honorable Sarah Opendi, Madam Olive Birunji, and Madam Emma Mujisha. We have some questions from the listeners, and the first question goes to Honorable Sarah Opendi. Okrut thinks you've made a good point where we are attempting to empower women, but care needs to be taken because we might be heading towards an imbalance in society. And all the responsibilities will be, shouldered by women. And yet, again, still women have believed that they are to be on the receiving side and men be giving. How do we solve this imbalance? The second question has come in from Yona. Yona says, good evening, doctor. My name is Mwebaza Yona, who works with the Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. I'm glad to see our Deputy Director General, Madam Olive, on this talk show. First of all, I personally appreciate the work she's doing for the industry. My question is, how can we get our daughters who are doing, he has a daughter who is doing O-level enrolled for aviation courses. Which subjects should she take? Some question on career guidance. The third question I'm picking is from Mog. I see the panel is full of really successful women who in simple terms have made it in life. Basing on that, I would like these women to talk about the new thing, which to me as a man is failing the whole women emancipation agenda, that is feminism. How can the panel of these highly successful women differentiate feminism and other forums of women emancipation so that our generation of women and girls can understand? So I think everybody will have a comment or two you think you can contribute to in answering questions that we are not very specific. But first I will go to Madam Sarah Kajingo. The digital divide in the digital era, because we are all going digital, how are women faring in the technology industry, and how can we cut down our connectivity costs and access to internet to facilitate businesses?
Thank you, Sarah. But first, to clarify about GROW, that women are not treated as statistics. It's important that that numbers and statistics are very key to impact investing. And under GROW, because the targets are quite diverse, we are aware that in the country today there is an industrialization agenda, and many women are also woke to that. Everybody is asking questions. How do I invest? How do I register my business? How do I access funds? How do we reduce high interest rates? How do we access patient capital? So anybody who is interested in transformation must be interested in numbers. Now today, cost of capital from the banks is 16% and above, isn't it? Now, under GROW and a project we are collaboratively implementing with government, private sector and government, funded by the World Bank, one of the biggest projects for women south of the Sub-Sahara, $217 million. So you have got to be methodical in ensuring there is impact. So one, we have capped the interest rate for those women who will want to borrow from, say, 4 million shillings to 200 million shillings. The interest rate is capped at 10%. That is progress. Those are numbers. And we are onboarding financial institutions, which we shall unveil in the next few days. Two, for the women at the lower strata, at the lower pyramid, who need training, who need to acquire this, I wouldn't call it expertise, but a skill in, say, in adding value. We are doing that in partnership with government agencies, NARO, for example, in agribusiness, I talked about Uganda Industrial Research Institute. So our approach is multi-pronged. So it's not they versus us. It's never the men versus the women. And it's never government or the private sector versus the other. We have to coalesce around national interests as a country, as a people of Uganda, and we know we must never fall short below a threshold. So coming to digitization, of course, when you consider our traditional homes, women may not have data. Some of them may not have the phones in the homes. So, but again...
And the phones are also causing domestic violence.
Yes.
WhatsApp.
But of course, progress is incremental.
Yes.
There was a time, I recall, I bought my first phone in 1996. Airtel was charging us in dollars. Then came MTN, I think 1997, where we had the cards to scratch and paying service fee. But because of correct policies in Uganda that advance health competition, we have grown so much to the extent that today you can buy Freedom voice bundles, you can buy and you can call across all networks at the same rates. That is progress.
Yeah.
Now, issues of infrastructure again are progressive, because where we have been as a country back then 30 years ago, total mess. Then we continue to progress, and again investment in infrastructure. So if you'd like to bring the cost of data down, which I'm sure NITA Uganda is seized with, and it has progressively been coming down, you then have to invest in broadband infrastructure, in the backbone. So progressively, the country will be covered. I have faith that that will be done. But at PSFU, we partner with financial institutions, again on fintechs, on financial inclusion. Mobile services have included women even further. Women save money on their mobile. They can move
there's
safely.
Financial inclusion with
financial
mobile money
inclusion
banking.
is key, So about the question on feminism, I'm sorry, I am not very well versed with feminism, but what I believe is that we had a very good system as Africans, where women were valued, fathers were responsible, took care of their homes, women invested in nurturing children, nurturing the home, and homes were stable for long. So my thoughts are that we need to work towards a world that's not radicalized. We need to take a step back, do some introspection, and pick some nuggets from our homes, how we were brought up. How is it that our moms and dads were able to keep their marriages for 50 years plus? What are we failing to do now that they did better?
Yeah, there are two schools of thought, Sarah, on that. One is the emerging school of thought that maybe the boy child is not being mentored well on how to deal with an empowered woman. There's also another school of thought which says, the women are now also maybe, doing revenge, and that I will ask Sarah, the rising women violence, but that will go to Honorable Sarah Pende. So, but if I may stick with you on economic issues, on connectivity, before you would cross borders and still receive calls in Kenya, Tanzania on Airtel. Now Airtel seems to stop with the borders. MTN goes across borders in Kenya, in Rwanda, but you can't pick it in Tanzania. What's happening with integration of technology?
Of course, we have to integrate on many things. our states, member states of the East African community, signed several protocols, movement of persons, free markets, but we've been experiencing non-tariff barriers, some of our products blocked at borders. So I think again, because for me, I'm an optimist. I think that we need to continuously build integration, continuously try to make our policies uniform. Because even if, for example, even if we are not experiencing any non-tariff barriers, over time, as Ugandans, East Africans at large, begin to produce products, phytosanitary standards catered for, products are certified, we are going to saturate this market, which is why it makes big business sense for us to penetrate other markets. But there is, again, the bigger picture of we must ensure that our own house is really ready for that. We must ready businesses, ready everything. You don't simply wake up and get a product onto a plane and fly. The cost of flight by air is still high. Our countries are not connected. So as you build infrastructure, and again, Uganda Airlines now flies to Kinshasa 4 times or 5 times a week. Yes, but a kilo of meat in Kinshasa, I mean, is quite high. We are looking for a market, but which is why countries must think and be deliberate about certain things. And it's a conversation PSFU would like to have with Uganda Airlines, for example, on how to lower strategically freight cost for certain products, again to build our trade. But coming back to digital, again it comes back to education. Whenever I travel out of Uganda, I receive a message that I wasn't able to enable roaming. So if you do not enable roaming, then you do not roam. But again, for me, Parliament passed the competition bill, the Competition Act. Consumers must be seized with these matters, and I think as a country we really need to get very well versed with certain things, or those who are schooled in tech, to really study these things. Because I too sometimes buy data, and in a short time it's gone, and you do not understand why. So is it that I have opened several apps, or is there a way I'm spending it unaware that it's reckless, or is it that I'm being charged more than I should?
Okay. Thank you so much. Honorable Pendi, the question on feminism, there is a question on a possibility, have we left the boy child behind? There's also cases of rising gender-based violence against educated women. What's happening in our social lives as we advance in this women empowerment struggle?
First, I want to appreciate that the fact that the men are listening in. Mr. Kurut is one of those. I don't know who Mog is. I hope it's another gentleman. But when I came and sat here and I saw all women, I had hoped that the moderator would be a man.
Why?
To at least represent the
other 50. The other gender.
The other gender here. And this is where I think the problem starts. Because oftentimes when we talk about even the women.
Honorable, there were comments online that the male child are going away.
So this is where we actually make the mistake that if it's Women's Day, it's a women's issue. If it's now we are here as a panelists, you know, the people to be invited are women. There should be a balance, because every other day you are here as a panelist with men and I think our other colleague. Sarah. So I hope next year we shall see a balance here so that we can debate with our men together. It shouldn't be something for the women alone. Now, when you look at this whole gender equality issue, while it is being championed by women, we must also appreciate where we're coming from. We must appreciate what society was like and how society viewed women. We must also appreciate that even going to school, for the women were the last, or the girls were the last to be considered. In a family where resources were limited, it was the boys who were to go to school, and the girl would stay at home to wait for the time when she would be married off. So, and of course, then in the past, unfortunately, even up to now, girls in some communities are looked at as a source of wealth for the family.
Bride price.
Yes, bride price. Today we held a dialogue in Parliament, and we had women from the refugee community. And it was sad hearing that even in the refugee camps, their parents, while they ran to Uganda, their parents that remained in South Sudan, negotiate and receive dowry. And while you are here in the refugee camp, you just realize that you've been married off without even knowing who you're going
Without consent.
Without consent. You are only informed. Sometimes the man would just come even to pick you from the refugee camp. That is, he has already paid your dowry. So you can imagine that kind of thing.
But Honorable, what is happening? In 2012, the Supreme Court banned mandatory bride price in the Mufumi case. How come people do not know about it, that bride price is no longer mandatory as evidence of customary marriage?
Yeah, it is not mandatory, but the point I'm making here is that
a source of wealth.
A source of, girls are a source of wealth. So, as a result of that, we must appreciate all these steps, right from the promulgation of the Constitution, right from, making the necessary legislations to protect the women, like the Domestic Violence Act, the Anti-Female Genital Mutilation Act, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act. Majority of the people who are trafficked are actually women, not men. We were in Terego equally last week. And what we found there was that there were still cases of forced marriages of the young girls. We actually found 2,203 girls impregnated from the age of 12 to 17, and this is statistics picked from the health facilities, and this is in a spate of 7 to 8 months. Yeah, about 8 months. So look at that number. So let us, and most of these girls, some of the girls that we were able to meet actually said they want to go back to school, but their parents are not there, are not supporting them to get back to school. So let us appreciate where the women and girls are coming from. And of course, in all these programs, the universal primary education brought in on board, the universal secondary education, it has enabled the girl child to go to school. But as all this is being done, let us not forget our cardinal responsibility as women in society, of childbearing, taking care of the children. We must know that it is the men that actually marry women. It is not the woman that marries the man. So you must be submissive, but also respect. So we need to, as we, empower these girls, we must still tell them to respect their husbands. However rich you may be, however well paid you may be, however, I don't know what else I can say, what other thing I can say beyond that. However educated actually you are, you must still respect your husband. Empowerment, women's empowerment does not mean that you should be above the man. And this is where the problem is. Some people think.
But how about being equal partners? Because Article 31 of the Constitution, I don't want to sound legalistic, but I can't avoid it as a lawyer. Article 31 of the Constitution provides that there will be equality upon entry in the marriage,
Yes.
equality within the marriage, equality upon
Absolutely.
dissolution
But
of the
that
marriage.
equality there must come.
Well, how come?
The equality must be accompanied by respect for one another.
Yes.
And that's what I'm talking about. That you must respect one another. But you must also, I mean, what do we mean by equality? You know, you are a woman in a home. You are a mother in a home. Let us not forget that responsibility. Now, imagine a woman that comes home. I've had a case of a man complaining, for how long will I suffer like this? The woman comes home at the time she wants. So is this what we're talking about? That there must be equal, you know, equality in the marriage?
No, that's
that
something
a man
different,
walks
I
in
think.
at his time, a woman, similarly, I should also go out and come back at the time that I want.
No.
Yes. I mean,
accountability.
you must
partners should be accountable to one
must,
another.
as much as possible, wherever you are, communicate, inform your partner. I am delayed because of ABCD, but can't be now. You know, we are equal partners in the marriage, and therefore, I go out with my friends, you go out with your friends. I mean, that is how marriages have failed in this time. And of course, the other issue that the new thing that is failing, I think MOG, that is failing the women's agenda. This is actually the problem. But also let's not forget that today there are men, because the woman is doing some business, because the woman is earning some money, there are men who have completely abandoned their responsibilities as heads of homes. And this is also, actually this is where there is that violence. And you know, they've been talking of Kameza money. I mean, why should we be talking about Kameza money? This social media has also created another problem in the lives of couples. Kameza, who should be putting Kameza? Why not the woman also? We all go to work. Why should it be the man?
Take you up on that one,
Yes.
actually. Most working women, according to the young men, ask for transport, ask for salon hair, can't even buy matchbox
That's
in a
not
home,
acceptable.
yet they work every day. Where
I
is this
think-
equality
Yeah, and
talk?
this is-
Can we walk the talk?
And this is
We should.
and this is what I'm talking about. That both of you are actually working. Why should there be Kameza money from the man and not Kameza money from the woman? You are both going to work. Both of you should put
need
money.
to
If
come
you put
in.
money today,
You have something to say.
Yeah.
if you
I
put
see-
money
I see what
today,
you're saying. Yeah.
let the man put money tomorrow. You are equal partners in this. The marriage,
Absolutely.
the
For
marriage.
me,
This is your
yeah.
family. You should both
So you should
contribute.
have a joint bank
Yes, you
where
should-
Kameza comes from.
You should
Yeah.
both contribute to the well-being of the family. It should not be, while the man is the head of the family, he should take overall responsibility, but the man must, the woman must provide the supportive role. Let us not forget of that fact that God created man and then created the woman as a helper to support the man to manage his creation.
I see other partners getting
Yes.
a bit
Yeah, I
What's
think
your take on
excited.
Kameza money?
I think, I think for me, what I want to agree is that as family, husband and wife, you must share the roles. But I also get the feeling that there's this perception that has been created over the years, and everybody wants to believe that actually women are not doing it. I believe there are many women actually who are contributing with the husbands in their families, and they are the silent majority. And I've faced cases where a gentleman says, my wife never contributes. And when you engage the wife, she brings out all the contributions she has had on the family. But because there is this feeling that I don't know where the woman's money
Maybe
goes,
they don't
I don't know where the woman's money goes. Also, when the men are in a group and everybody is saying, I don't know where my money goes, they will all join to look the same way, because that culture, the perception will take us even 50 years. Because perception is the most dangerous thing we have in society or in the world. And in Africa, that's what it is. It has taken us 48 years so far, since the first World Conference sat for women. Perception will take us another number of years, but actually there are many women who are contributing to the Kameza, but they are not speaking out. So for me, I think we need to continue sensitizing and creating awareness to women that it's not a one-way thing.
We've seen divorce cases where when women are asked what they contributed, they've been replacing forks, they've been buying, you know, the kitchen spices, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But because the men think they are picking rent, they are picking fees, they think they are the ones running the home, they don't look at all these other expenses that the woman says, let me take care of my kitchen, let me take care of the kids, you know, clothes, and the men think the women are not contributing. Do you think that's a problem?
That can also be a problem, but the solution that I think which is the best solution is to encourage the men and women to sit on a round table. For example, if the woman is earning more than the husband, why would the husband remain with all the bigger activities, school fees, rent, medical, name them? What is the woman using her money for? Because the children are children for both of you. So I think we need to encourage men and women to sit on a round table and also agree on some of those, so that even as you enter the marriage, you've agreed on how you're going to manage. The other one, which I think, which will try to solve that, we need to engage the men in addressing issues of violence, ending violence against women. The world where I come from, I was the country director for SOS Children's Villages Uganda, and we launched what we call the male engagement program. The male champions on Entebbe Road, by the lakeside, Kakiri, Gulu, Fort Poto, and we saw an impact. The male had a committee, and if your child is not going to school, they would go and report you to the fellow men. Because the men have this ego, it's a big ego. Nobody wanted to be reported to the male engage, but to the same men. So with time, we kept monitoring, and we started seeing a reduction in violence and men failing to take children to school. So we must be able to engage the men in every single activity if we are going to end that. For me, that's what I would comment on that.
Emma, you wanted to say something on Kameza money?
I wanted to say that some of us were cheated. In our culture, there's no Kameza. Actually, the Chiga women have always participated equally in the economics of the home. So I am a bit cheated, and I keep telling my husband that when I claim, I shall claim interest upon interest. But what I wanted to say is that I think it's difficult for me to think about feminism in its, in its entirety. But what I'd like to bring in is really having the men as allies in bringing up our children right. There are the things that have happened in our culture and in the past, but we need to look at going forward. How do we raise our children, both boys and girls?
For a modern world.
For a modern world. For today. So how am I raising my son to find all these empowered women? Is he going to be able to stand up and be a man that he should be? How am I raising my daughters to say, yes, you're empowered, yes, you're going to school, but there's dynamics. There's a language that men speak that we don't understand. You know, the whole thing of men are from which planet, and women, I think is real. So how do you survive in that planet? How do you have healthy relationship even as you're a young girl, as a teenager, and finally as a grown-up? How do you keep your space, but at the same time, be able to engage effectively with men? Same for my son. How do I get my son to be confident in himself and work hard and be the man that he should be, and not be intimidated by all these strong women that are around him? So I think we need to work together in our homes to create the environment that will let our children grow into those people that we want to have in the future. We may not be able to do much about the 50 and 60-year-olds or the 40-year-olds, but what do we do for the generation that's coming?
Okay. Sarah, since you're more tech savvy, there's always debate on X, on transport refund, on Kameza money. What is your take? Because an empowered girlfriend is still demanding for transport refund from a fair boy. Where is the equality in these spaces?
Tough question, eh? But like I said earlier, our moms and dads kept their marriages stable for 50 years plus. What is it they were doing that we are not doing? Two, And these are my thoughts. They are not cast in stone. I won't say that I'm an expert on these affairs, but I think we are adopting Western models very fast, and they are disrupting everything African, everything Ugandan, everything family. Because, I mean, what happened? Where did we go wrong? Because for me, I do not subscribe to the school of women versus men. Men are this, women are this, men are bad, they are doing this to women, because it takes two to tango. In a home, we have young boys, we have children who are boys, who are girls. So if we continue advancing this message as if men are inherently negative, it's going to affect our own young children who are boys. So for me, again, I miss the old school family. We are lucky that some of our parents are alive. Let's pick some lessons from them. Back home, you were taught, for example, you would hear a mom saying, "Omkaza yogeza kawowo." But if you are going to be holding collars and fighting on the street, I think that's not good. Again, which speaks to your branding as a woman. What are your values? As a father, a responsible person, fathering children, what is it you're doing that's a great example to your children, not to boys versus girls? For me, I think let's go back to Ubuntu. Let's go back to the etiquette, the social graces we are taught when we are growing up. Ubuntu bulamu. I remember in school back then there was a program in senior one, Mvubuka Agunjuse. Because again, it comes to how we relate, interpersonal relations. But you're not going to go to court to learn these things. So we have to have time with our children. Let's not leave our children to be raised by cartoons, Cartoon Network on television, and get back home. Both of us, parents. And let's resolve to go back to our cultural values and pick out the positive aspects and maybe ignore those that we see as bad, but also be careful to adopt everything Western. Of course, the West has a big communication network. They use television and everything to endear their ideologies to many people across the world, including Africa. So, and children are influenced, young boys. But when you ask the question, if you say, how are we bringing up the young boys to deal with an empowered woman? It's as if we imagining that the boys will be seated waiting and not getting empowered themselves. So I think for me, I'm for a balanced world. Easy does it, and if it comes to family, forgive. It takes two to tango. Take pleasure in preparing a meal the way our moms did, and reconcile husband and wife.
Olive, you want to say something?
No, mine, I think there was a question on aviation.
Yes, career guidance.
I think career guidance. My comment here is that one, if you look at the aviation sector, it has several different professionals in there. You have the engineers, you have the air traffic controllers, you have the lawyers, you have those in operation management, aviation management. So the question would be at the entry, and where do you want your child to be, or where does the child want to be? For example, if the child wants to go straight into piloting, we have the Sorority Flying School, which is still training actually young people right from the beginning, and other schools that have come in. That requires more or less science subjects, the maths and the physics. But you'll find that where we have the lawyers who go into and have aviation law, these come in as lawyers from the normal law school. Then you'll also get in operations. You have people who have done BBA, you've done economics, you've done maths, you've done, so it is a wide area if one wants to enter the aviation sector. Because once you're in there, with whatever course you've come in, there's training that you're given. Because you can't go to a school and learn everything except piloting and a few courses. So my advice is that sit down with your daughter, because the most successful people are those that allow their children to be part of the decision making. If you feel that I want my daughter to be a pilot, if she has never had interest in being a pilot, and it's the dad's wish for her to be a pilot, and that's the step you take, it will affect the girl child in that nature. So engage them. If they want to be lawyers, let them be the lawyers, and then find a way of moving them into aviation law, because there's training. If there are people who want to go into direct trainings like air traffic controlling, still let them do the subjects that they can do in order to get into that area. Because if you've done arts, it would be hard for you to cross to air traffic controlling or engineering or other subjects that are more science leaning. So we have already a career program that we've implemented. Every year we've picked a number of schools where we are going to, where we've been going for the last 2 years, just to enable the girls to appreciate why they need to be in the aviation sector. So for me, I think that's what you need to do. Which subjects, because we have that career path and we can share that.
Thank you very much. Honorable, we have an issue of young people who seek employment in the Middle East. And majority of these are girls. Each time I reach at the airport, you find a batch with covered heads and, you know, going into Middle East, and most of them have faced, some, not most of them, some have faced the human rights violations. From the legislative approach, how can we protect these young girls from mistreatment in the Middle East?
First, it's extremely unfortunate that we have most of our young girls leaving this country to travel to go and do work that while here they are told something else, but when they get there they end up as majorly domestic servants.
With passports taken away.
With passports taken away. I've actually had cases where we've had to help the girls, of course, working with the Ministry of Gender and Foreign Affairs. I had even some from my own district. But the unfortunate bit is that some of these girls, we have talked to them, but they don't listen. I don't know whether you've talked to them even at the airport. You speak to them and they tell you, we know we are adults, we know what we want. There was a time I was actually on radio in my district, sensitizing people and trying to tell people that there are better opportunities here. There are things, so many opportunities that we are not tapping. There are things that people can do. People have land, but they are not using the land. And every other time, you know that, well, you produce whatever you can produce, you definitely find market for it. And after the radio talk show, to my surprise, of course, people were listening in. The next day, around in the afternoon, I get a phone call from an LC1 chairman. And unknown to us, Tororo was a route that was being used to take these girls. That was the time when the ministry had banned the export of, you know, labor. So they were using Tororo as a route. People would come, they are dropped, and then they use some village route, get into Kenya, and move through Nairobi. So there were 5 girls. So when I rushed there, I found the LC3 chairman had gotten the security and brought these people to the sub-county. So when I interacted with the girls, you know what they told me? You are a minister. You are working.
Yeah. You don't know what it meant.
Leave us to also find work.
Yeah.
And they even told me we are even adults. We know what we are doing. So I asked them, do you know exactly where you're being taken? That didn't matter to them. Well, we handed them over to the police. And of course, I don't know where the case ended. But as members of parliament, we have had to ensure that we deal with this challenge by amending the Employment Act. And of course, in the Employment Act, we were trying to ensure that we put in provisions that will protect these women and girls that are taken out of this country. Before you live here, you must have a contract. That was what our thinking was. You must know exactly where you're going. Other than a situation where girls are simply taken out to some, and when they reach there, they are put in some
At times they are all dumped in
yes,
one
they are
room.
all dumped in one place. You've seen videos of them saying, we've been here for 3 months. And then it is people who come, you know, I think they pick.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that kind of thing?
Modern slave trade.
Yes.
Slave trade.
So we are trying to use the law to try and ensure that people who leave this country for work, whatever work they are going to do, must know exactly where they are going. I am going to Saudi Arabia. I'm going to work in place X.
At the hospital.
Yes, whether it's a hospital, whether it's domestic work, I must live here knowing. We've had graduates. Somebody says, I'm actually a degree holder. I didn't know that I was going to end up as a domestic worker. So we are using, amending, of course, the Employment Act to ensure that these women and girls are clearly protected. Unfortunately, the act was sent to the president. I'm told he returned it, although we have not been properly briefed. Normally when the president returns a bill, it's read on the floor. The letter is read and the reasons why he has returned it. So that we have not yet received. So I hope that we'll get to know and conclude that, because that piece of legislation was what we hoped that would finally help us deal with this challenge. But the number is alarming. Over 300 girls, almost daily, leave this country to go and, you know, work wherever they, you know, they are taken out for work, but they don't know where they are going. But the other challenge, I think you remember the undercover reporter.
Yes.
That was a sad story. We have places here in this country where women and these young girls are being kept waiting for the time when they would be exported, as if they are their commodities being kept somewhere. So these are unfortunate situations. But the worst bit that I want to bring to your attention is the trafficking and exploitation of women and girls even in country. We've had sad instances where women or girls are moved from wherever, brought into a particular home here for sex trade. Sex trade. There is a proprietor of this business, and your work is to wait for whichever man comes.
Brothels?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the sad incident, this was a real story, of this lady who was being paid 5,000 per person that she would sleep with. Yes, 5,000 shillings. And the owner...
From the owner?
The owner...
So we have slave owners.
Yes, the owner is paid 50,000. Out of that 50,000, you are paid 5,000.
Oh my God.
And you are there without a phone, without anything. You are locked up there. It is more or less like, I don't know what I can call it. I don't know what I can call that. So this sex exploitation is something that we must be on the lookout for, because it's becoming a problem in this country. And I hope that we have a private members bill, the sexual offences bill, which we
it was returned.
It was, yeah, but we are moving it because the business in the 10th Parliament all collapsed. So we started it afresh, and we're in the tail end. We hope that very soon we'll have that tabled, but I hope that it can pass, and the bill can pass, and we hope that the president can assent to it. And once he assents to that, we hope that that will help deal with these people who are now promoting this sex trade. It's actually sexual exploitation, if I can use the right word.
Yes. Sarah, you want to say something on that?
I think that the challenge is that
unemployment.
Of course, there is unemployment in Uganda. Population is growing very fast, but what we are doing at PSFU is to contribute to certification. I had the opportunity to speak with a young lady who is employed in Dubai, and she said, if you have a skill, if you are a coffee barista and you have a certificate, you get into a dignified work opportunity, so you don't have to go and work in someone's home where you risk being dehumanized.
A certificate of what?
A certificate as a barrister. Actually, what others are doing, who manage to get into homes and they're not dehumanized, they were paid well, they actually pay for themselves to acquire these skills. So I think we need to be deliberate about this and collaboratively with government to ensure that more young people are skilled in specific opportunities that are on demand outside there, so that as the ladies go, they know, yes, this hotel requires this number of coffee baristas, this number of receptionists who are trained in frontline desk management with a certificate, and they then go aware that this is what they are going to do. Otherwise, if we continue this way, it's very, very dehumanizing what people go through and what we watch in the videos.
Wow, it's been a night of great conversations, but unfortunately time is not on our side.
Before
so
you
we'll
close,
ask, yes please.
Just half a second.
I want each one of you actually to share your parting shots and a message for Women's Day. If we can be brief, 1 minute each.
Yes.
A message on Women's Day and your parting shots on this show. Let me continue, Sarah, with you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for hosting us and for being a great moderator. Women, you're welcome to Ginger from 15th to the 17th. Come, exhibit, showcase your services. We shall have a creche. Don't say you have a baby and remain home. Come and network, learn. If everything goes to plan and the Inevan, to Her Royal Highness, graces us with her presence, we are sure that she's of great influence. She will rally all of you. So you're welcome. And Women's Day is going to be celebrated in Katakwi. Again, collaboratively with government, we are going to unveil a number of products, and His Excellency will grace that occasion. Please look out in media, on media channels, and get to know where you can benefit. We shall also be reaching out to you in the countryside so that you grow your businesses, and may your businesses grow to top African brands. Otherwise, I wish you a happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Honorable.
Thank you. I must say that as women, we are equal partners in the development of our nation, and I want to appreciate the government for the support that it has actually given to the women. His Excellency the President has walked the talk this time by ensuring that the women are actually placed in key positions in the cabinet. We have a vice president, we have a prime minister, and of course, parliament, we have, the women are there. We have a female speaker, of course, she's taken over from the previous female speaker. But I want to state that as parliament, our key role is legislation and of course appropriation. But as we legislate, my humble appeal to the executive is to implement these laws. Support the agencies that are supposed to engage in the implementation. Why we have domestic violence still on the increase is because we have not given the necessary support to the law enforcement agencies. So it's my humble appeal that we support the law enforcement agencies with the necessary resources, both human and financial, to enable them handle these cases that are reported to them. I want to appeal to every Ugandan, but this being a women's week, I want to appeal to the women that let us make a difference in our communities by planting trees. Wherever I have been, I was in Abim last week, I was in Terego, and the situation is not different from other parts of the country. We have cut down the trees and planting less. Fortunately, the rains are here. Let us plant trees. Let us protect the environment, because short of that, climate change is real and it will affect the women and girls the most. So that is my humble appeal. Of course, as I talk and request the women to plant the trees, let the men also plant the trees. If each one of us did that, then we shall have a better future, a brighter future, because, as I said, climate change is real. And there are areas today where women have the food, but they cannot cook the food. They can't cook the food because there is no wood fuel. I hope that in the near future, government will also support the various communities to use biogas for cooking. I was in Tigray, a remote area in Ethiopia, and what is happening there is that the families are supported with, this biogas system. So it has helped. When I say this, people don't want to hear this, but I can assure you, it has helped end open defecation, because you get into the latrine aware that this is the fuel you're going to use to prepare your food and light your house. So let us use biogas. It will help us end open defecation, but also help us stop cutting trees, because that will be a source. That will be a source of cooking and also lighting the homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a serious point, but people don't want.
Sorry, no.
Mine, I think I want to thank you, moderator, Madam Moderator, and I also to thank UBC for giving us this opportunity to celebrate Women's Day in style, because I think we need awareness and visibility if we are going to continue promoting the issues of women. But I also want to add that from the time when the first women conferences were held to date, 48 years down the road, there's a lot that still needs to be done. We are not yet there. And looking at the numbers, if we are to make a change, to make a big difference, we need to increase women in the leadership positions. Nobody is going to do that for us, and we won't wait for anybody else to invest in ourselves. I want to appeal to the women that are in that level where you think you're not far away from leadership, to deliberately invest in yourself in order to get to the leadership position. When we have many more women in leadership, CEO level, many women in the boardroom, where decisions are made on how much is invested in girl-child programs, mentorship programs, for me, I think that will be one way that will trigger our engagement more faster. And lastly, to say we need to engage, it's a partnership between men and women. It's not one way. If we say we want to go it alone, it won't work. Because even when I want to get to the board and we are only 3 women or 2 women out of the 9 men, there must be an engagement. So it's a partnership, but we need to service that partnership and work on it very well in a very structured manner. Let's not expect that we'll get the way out without being deliberate. So we must have a clear purpose from the beginning, with a clear direction where we want to go, and we say we want to increase the women at the top. I don't mean that's only leadership that we need to work on, but I think it's one of the triggers that will unlock some of the areas that are still blocked. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Madam Mugisha, you have the last word.
Yes, thank you very much, Sarah. It's been a great panel and a pleasure to sit with these very powerful women. My parting shots, I promised my circle in Bushenyi that I would send shouts out to them. I think I love the circle movement. My circle is Buturo Circle. Yes. I come from, so shouts out to my circle and for the great work they're doing for the women in Bushenyi. My other last parting shot is very similar to Olive. I think it takes both men and women to create the world we want to create. So let's partner, let's be allies for one another, let's create the families that we want to create, and let's empower our children for a good future. So happy Women's Day, and let's continue this partnership.
Well, it's been an honor, moderating this great panel of women achievers, and I hope the younger out there, you've been inspired. You can achieve much more. The women empowerment, agenda, we have achieved more, but there's much more to be done, and the struggle continues. It's good night from us at UBC Studios. Happy Women's Day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Fred!
Osmosis.
Freddy! Fred Dollar, my boss, CEO Inojo, the general of generals, the conqueror of conquerors, the first and the final, the sky above the skies, the promised land, the terms and the conditions, the international king crocodile, the source of the
Osmosis.
Nile.
I don't have money today.
Just take a polite loan of 200k to stock on my shop. The signs and symptoms of success. The bank commander, not the bank teller.
Why hassle for a loan when you've got MTN Momo? Weso Tinge. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from the different loan options from our partners and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable.
The government of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is calling upon all stakeholders such as the chief administrative officers, city mayors, resident city commissioners, city clerks, city and division councillors, wards and LC chairpersons, as well as the residents and business communities to cooperate with the UBOS field teams as we embark on advanced preparations to conduct the National Population and Housing Census on the 10th of May 2024. The census will be a 10-day exercise to obtain statistical data and information that will be used for planning and policy formulation, including information on 1. How many we are, 2. Where we are, 3. How we are living, 4. What we own, and 5. Where we access services from. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics has now started listing of households and mapping in the 11 cities of Arua, Fort Portal, Gulu, Hoima, Jinja, Lira, Mbale, Masaka, Mbarara, Soroti, and in the Greater Kampala comprising of Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono districts. For more information, please call 0755 342 128 or 0773 342 128. This message is brought to you by the Executive Director and Census Commissioner, Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Census 2024. It matters to be counted.
Into the area of an accident. So we are well established there. There are channels of dialogue which are well established. I, as head of the IEA, feel that I have the attention of the government of Ukraine. Of course, I just finished my conversation with the president of the Russian Federation. So as an international organization trying to help trying to contribute to the stabilization of the situation. I think we are very solidly there. From that to say everything is fine, I wouldn't say it. But there are good elements. We are able to, through our technical work, to have interactions which are concrete, very concrete, not only at the plant, with the management of the plant, but also here. Today I was having, before seeing President Vladimir Putin, I was discussing with the Director General of the state company Rosatom, Mr. Alexei Tkachev, and his team, also with the presence of an important delegation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, the Russian nuclear regulator, Rostechnadzor, and also representatives of the Ministry of Defense. So we could go through the entire agenda, and this is indispensable. So I can raise with them specific issues and get their views. So we are working hard.
So, as for the IAEA, your position, what are your suggestions regarding the safety of this nuclear power plant? What should be done as for you to guarantee its safety at this turbulent time?
There are two levels. One level has to do with the physical integrity of the plant. Let me put it in very, very, very simple terms for your audience. Never attack a nuclear power plant, or, importantly, don't turn a nuclear power plant into a military base, thereby making it a target. This is something I brought to the United Nations Security Council back in May last year, establishing 5 basic principles. I mentioned the 2 which are the most important to you just now. And I think this, by and large, is working. Because the international community, not only Moscow and Kyiv or whomever, the international community has a very clear sense of what has to be done or not, very clearly. So that is one dimension, prevent the worst. And the second is more dense, perhaps less attractive in a conversation like this, but it has to do with many technical aspects of what is going on there, how we ensure the cooling function. You remember that there was the blow-up of the Novakarkovka Dam in June last year, if I remember correctly. And so this altered completely the levels of the Dnieper River, from which the plant was pumping water for the cooling. So there's been a lot of work there. The agency is interacting. I mean, a number of things which are indispensable so that we have a relatively stable situation.
But we see the ongoing shilling of the nuclear power plant. And since you were in Kyiv, did you warn President Zelensky, President of Ukraine, about the potential consequences of bombing the nuclear object? Is he aware of that?
My message, I think everybody is aware of what is at stake here. And my function here is to continuously draw the attention of everyone about what is at risk. We know that in a war situation, the unexpected may happen, simply because it's not a conversation, a rational conversation between two people like you and me now. This is a physical confrontation of wills. And not always you will find this rational space, and things can happen. But I can assure you that I am very clear when I speak with everybody about this. So I am confident that they are hearing us. But of course, until this ends, and it ends without a nuclear accident, we keep our prudence and we keep our efforts alive.
And a month ago you said that IAEA has not collected enough evidence to state who was conducting the shilling, although to most of the experts the trajectories at least are quite obvious. But so what data IAEA is still missing. What about the data provided by the Russian Federation?
On this, let me tell you something which is very important. First of all, that since we established the 5 basic principles at the UN Security Council, there hasn't been a direct shelling on the plant itself, as it was the case before. So if that happened now, my reaction would be very different, because now I have a mandate to look into this, to ask questions, to try to determine what has happened. Before that was not the case, because the agency had simply nuclear safety security remit, which was narrower and more simple. Now we have said the IAEA is going to be looking into these things, and to the extent possible indicate what has happened. There have been some minor episodes, dangerous, I would say, in terms of perhaps some drones hitting Energodar, which is the village nearby the plant. But on those, we haven't been able to gather. We are, apart from many other things, we are a group of inspectors. And when we pronounce ourselves, it must be on the basis of our own independently gathered information. If I don't have enough, I can have a hypothesis, like you have, like many people have, but I cannot say this has happened or point fingers when I don't have all the elements in my hands to say this is clearly the source of the attack. I think here, at the end of the day, there is clarity on what are the consequences of something like this. And this is what I keep saying. When we have information, for example, as it happened just a few days ago, for those following what we have been saying, when we have information, intelligence information or any other information that there are military possibilities, that there could be military movement, we ring the alarm bell and we say, attention, we are watching. Nothing should happen. And we are trying to play a deterrent role in this regard. Not perfect, maybe, but much better than nothing.
I cannot help asking you about the equipment worth 8.5 million euros that you provided, IAEA provided to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Are there any mechanisms to ensure that this money actually goes to where it should go?
Yeah, indeed. As you rightly mentioned, first of all, the IAEA does not give money. This is very important. What we get from countries that are willing to do so, we get equipment. Normally safety equipment for nuclear power plants, not Zaporozhye, but the other Rivne.
All of the nuclear power plants there.
Exactly. They are nuclear power plants, and Chernobyl. Which, because of the war and because of the alteration of the supply chain, which is not flowing as in peacetime, is not ensured. So we are channeling this into the facilities where they need one or the other thing. So, and we as an international organization have a very, I would say, efficient audit system to avoid that there is any abuse. We are very careful about these things.
So from what we know, at the moment there is a shortage of employees at the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Have you discussed the plans of the Russian Federation to hire more personnel for this nuclear power plant?
We have. We have looked into this. Of course, my impression is that the situation in terms of the staff is relatively correct. There are more recruitments ongoing, but then again, I should say that this situation is, let's say, satisfying for as long as the plant is in this shutdown situation, where it's not generating power, electricity. If it were to start again, then perhaps the needs in terms of technical personnel would be different. But this is something about which we still need to see what's going to happen.
The demand of Minister of Energy of Ukraine, who said that it's important to withdraw Russian troops to ensure the safety of the nuclear power plant. Do you think that this move would ever really secure the safety of the nuclear power plant, or have completely opposite results?
Well, I wouldn't put it in those terms. I think that this is, of course, a political statement that has to do with the conflict in a wider sense. I cannot imagine that there would be such a isolated move from the Russian Federation without a wider agreement. We all, I'm a diplomat, I'm a man that works for peace. I hope that we will collectively find the right path towards that.
And to Poland now, where farmers protesting in the nation's capital reportedly broke into the parliament building. Some of the demonstrators were seen clashing with the police. There has been a wave of protests by agricultural workers throughout the European Union in recent months. The outrage has focused on new environmental regulations that farmers say are crippling their industry. Polish farmers are seeking a ban on cheap imports of grain from neighboring Ukraine. Here is what some of them had to say.
Something has changed. It has changed for the worse. The EU has started to impose its ideology on us, and today it's the farmers. This applies to farmers, for example, the climate revolution, this climate package, green energy, and green order, which someone will introduce, unfortunately, will destroy Polish farms.
Products not only from Ukraine but also from outside Europe destabilize our economy and will lead farmers to bankruptcy. That is why there is such great outrage not only in Poland but throughout Europe. Farmers see a great threat that their farms are at risk and that they will simply have to stop producing.
Earlier, my colleague Charlotte Dubensky spoke about the developments with RT correspondent Marina Kosareva and Steven Gage, a professor at the Institute of European Studies in Belgrade.
Polish farmers have had enough. They can no longer take this at their own expense. It all started, of course, last year when Polish farmers started protesting, started complaining, saying that, hey, all this cheap Ukrainian grain that is entering and flooding our market is messing with our livelihoods and we cannot make ends meet. Something needs to happen. And during this time, there were also complaints that Ukrainian grain was being dumped from trucks and from trains. Even the Polish agricultural minister had to apologize and justify his citizens' actions, saying, well, they're going through tough economic times. You have to understand them as well. And then we have the Prime Minister of Poland saying that perhaps we're looking into temporarily closing the border even.
We are talking with the Ukrainian side about temporarily closing the border and closing trade. And I will also talk to Polish farmers about this. And such a solution would be temporary and mutually painful. We are the most pro-Ukrainian state, but we also have the biggest problems in all of Europe, resulting from the Russian-Ukrainian war. The price of free trade with Ukraine is too high, and we can't pay it back.
Here's what's interesting is that you have Donald Tusk asking European partners to understand Polish farmers' concerns, yet at the same time you have Vladimir Zelensky saying, no, we understand that it's tough for Polish farmers, and not only Polish farmers, I'll get to that in a second, but he wants Polish farmers to understand that they need to suffer for the time being for the sake of Ukraine, which of course is tough to explain to people that can't pay their bills.
We must finally find a solution to the situation on the Polish border, which has gone beyond both economics and morality long ago. It is simply impossible to explain how the hardships of a bleeding country can be used in domestic political struggles.
At the same time, there's only so much that people can go on supporting Ukraine at their own expense, you know?
Stefan, I just want to bring you into the conversation at this point. How much of a problem has this been across Europe in terms of this cheap grain coming in and undercutting the farmers?
The farmers' protests is a problem that was brewing for some time now, even before the escalation of conflict in Eastern Europe. They are very significant because not only Polish citizens, but citizens across Europe are sick and tired with the war and are sick and tired with this totalitarian style, single-minded view of the Ukrainian conflict. And they are constantly expected to go with the narrative that is given and to constantly sacrifice for God knows what, for things that are very far away from their interests as citizens, for the interests of their countries and so on. So I do think that this is going to continue and that this protest will, of course, cause a chain reaction in other European countries.
Marina, just want to bring you back in. How about the EU? They're obviously the proponents of this policy. They introduced it 2022, basically when the Ukraine conflict started. They scrapped the tariffs on Ukraine goods that were transiting to, and that was this accumulation, as you described, of cereal products flooding the market, undercutting the local farmers' prices, causing these problems. How has the EU responded?
Well, so far it hasn't really done much. Well, they are the ones who started this to begin with when they changed their EU regulations, in particular the agreement between the European Union and Ukraine. They completely removed all restrictions when it comes to Ukrainian truck drivers. And this is the restrictions for drivers transporting goods between Ukraine and the European Union. So this is not only affecting Poland, this is affecting the whole bloc, which is why we've seen protests in other countries, not just Poland. All these farmers in the EU are saying, hey, we need a solution because something needs to happen. This is an unfair advantage for Ukrainian farmers. Yes, they're struggling right now, but at the same time, we are struggling as well, and something needs to be done. This is the latest when it comes to the EU, their statement.
The best way would be to support Ukraine in transit and transport to seaports and send products to countries where Ukraine has always traditionally sent its products. What we need for this is a positive approach from Ukraine and some cooperation. Our Ukrainian partners must understand the situation of our farmers. No market can withstand such a level of supply increase.
For Russia, this is once again another example of how the West puts its own interests over the interests of its own citizens. And we've seen this time and time again. And we heard today from Maria Zakharova, the foreign ministry spokesman, who basically reiterated that and said that this is something that we see from the West time and time again.
For 2 years, they talked about food security, about the need to feed the poorest, it was said, by the countries of the European Union, NATO and Western countries, which includes Poland. And now they demand exactly the opposite, for products to be slowed down, not allowed, blocked, and the Ukrainian ones are not allowed to come to them. But this is not even hypocrisy, this is a perversion. In the medical aspect of the word, this is a perversion. All this, what is happening to farmers and the countries of the European Union, is provoked by the regimes in those countries, but they cannot admit this, because otherwise they will need to admit not just the wrongness of the course, this is very important, but the maliciousness.
Of course, when it comes to Washington, it's really far away from the plights of European farmers, so perhaps they don't really care about this. But when it comes to the EU, again, they should have seen this coming all along. So this is where the question arises. What were they thinking and what were their plans? Either they thought that this would be over very soon, so their farmers wouldn't be affected, or they thought, well, they'll be affected, but somehow they'll manage, which is just ludicrous.
Right, stable and friendly. That's how India's foreign policy chief has summed up relations with Russia amid the Ukrainian conflict.
Everyone conducts a relationship based on past experiences. If I look at the history of post-independence India, Russia has never hurt our interests. We've always had a stable and very friendly relationship, and our relationship with Moscow today is based on this experience.
Western powers have been urging New Delhi to change its stance towards Russia, but India has stood firm in its neutral status despite the difficulties of balancing its financial interests with its international obligations. The spokesperson of the ruling BJP party outlines the current stance.
India-Russia friendship has stood and faced all kinds of turbulences and weathers. Russia has been there for India, and India has been there for Russia in all sectors, starting from defense, starting from investment in hydrocarbons, starting from investment in oil, starting procuring oil from Russia. The most important point in this is, for in India's foreign policy radar, Russia holds a very, very important place. India does not take any pressure from Western world. India does not seek any certificates or dictations from the Western world regarding its ties with Russia or any other country for that matter. India will continue to engage with Russia to explore further sectors of energy, of hydrocarbon, of petroleum, of defense, which it has been doing for a long time.
Well, I stand corrected on that. It's just that sometimes one obviously does come across headlines where you see Western politicians urging New Delhi to put pressure on Moscow to end the conflict. But I do specifically want to ask you about New Delhi's position vis-a-vis the Ukraine conflict. I mean, we feel that we're reaching almost a dangerous point. We've got President Macron saying that we're not ruling out sending Western troops to Ukraine. We're hearing taps of German officials talking about helping Ukraine blow up Russian infrastructure. New Delhi says we want this conflict to be resolved. Do you see resolution coming before escalation at this point in time?
It is in the interest of the global peace that the resolution of the conflict is achieved at the earliest. This is not an era for any nation, without naming any specific country, to add fuel to the fire. Rather, this is an era to douse the fire, to control the fire, so that every country which is as a stakeholder in this conflict, rather than escalating the war, should devise or come up with methods so that both sides are on the table and peace is achieved at the earliest.
RT.com is where you can get more details of all the stories we're following. I'll see you again at the top of the hour. Bye now.
Welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. A pattern has emerged. The more the West panics over its failed Ukraine project, the more it is willing to escalate the conflict. The same conflict that they say they're not directly involved in. The last thing they are considering is a negotiated settlement. Cross-talking Ukraine, I'm joined by my guest, Larry Johnson in Tampa. He's a managing partner for Berg Associates, a former CIA analyst and U.S. State Department counterterrorism official. In Lake Jackson, we have Daniel McAdams. He is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. And here in Moscow, we have Stanislav Krapivnik. He is a former U.S. Army officer and veteran. All right, gentlemen, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Daniel, let me go to you. So many things have been happening over the last few days. The usual nonsense coming from the French president, contradictory information coming from Sergeant Schultz in Germany, and then, of course, we have these German generals talking. But, you know, all in, if you want to kind of distill down what's going on, it's what's called sunk cost fallacy. They cannot comprehend that they have put so many resources into a project that has failed utterly, but they're willing to double down. Daniel.
Well, you know, here we have Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, who I think it was yesterday said, I knew all along Ukraine couldn't win. I just didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to, you know, discourage anyone or dissuade anyone. And I think that's the cat out of the bag. I remember after a few years in Iraq, you started seeing people, all the think tankers and all the experts started saying that, well, I knew all along it was a bad idea. Well, I knew all along they didn't have WMDs. I just didn't say anything. So I think when you start seeing the rats like Rubio fleeing the sinking ship, I think, you know, at least in the U.S., the game is up. And when you talk about, we'll talk about later, the money and the Republican Party in the U.S. as we move into the electoral season, it doesn't look good from the U.S. side for Ukraine.
Well, you know, Larry, there seems to be this infallibility complex that these people have. They just cannot comprehend that they have, on a major scale. Look, Afghanistan, Iraq, that's far away. You can say it was a long time ago. But this is impacting the world in a way that they never could have imagined, particularly Europe here. And it's reputational damage here. They are not infallible, and that's what they're finding out. Larry.
Well, there's a widening gulf between the rhetoric and the capability. So, on the one hand, as we saw with the intercepted conversations with the Germans, you know, there's always talk about, boy, yeah, we want to escalate this, or we want to look at using the Taurus missile to hit the Kerch Bridge. But then at the same time, they concede, well, yeah, okay, it's going to take 8 months. We can't do it right away. Remember the 1 million shells we were going to produce for Ukraine? Oh, well, okay, we did 300,000. So across the board, the U.S. military can't meet its recruiting goals. The British have what I call ejectile dysfunction. They can't launch a missile out of a submarine. And so from the actual military capability that NATO has, it's a wreck. It's a disaster. And yet, what they're saying and the threats that they're making towards Russia are becoming sort of more intense. So there really is a disconnect there.
Well, Larry, before I go to Stanislav here, can you just give us an assessment of the French army right now?
Well, by the way,
I was going to ask Larry what the French army, what is its status right now? I mean, is it a major power?
No.
Okay, hold that thought. I'm going to go to Stanislav right now. Well, the French president is talking about sending troops. Now, I don't speak French. I've looked at the transcript. It's hard to say if he's saying French troops or NATO troops. It's unclear, at least my reading of it. But what about that? I mean, we're talking about escalation. This is what this program's called. Expect escalation. NATO troops in Ukraine? Really? Stanislav.
Well, first of all, by the way, the ejection issue isn't just with the British. The Germans showed the same thing in the Red Sea when they tried to down an American drone that they took to be a hostile. 2 missiles, both missed, fell into the sea. So it's a NATO-wide issue. You know, even in the 90s and begin 2000s when I was serving, you could watch the degradation in discipline. You could watch the degradation in combat readiness that was already underway. Macron, now the French do have units that can go. They've got the French Foreign Legion, they've got Special Forces troops, but they're not enough to fight an actual war. So I think what they're hoping is once they go in, they'll pull the rest of NATO in with them, behind them. It's one thing if it's just the French or it's the pre-Baltic states that go in there and they'll back off. It's a different thing, I mean, if it's the Poles or the pre-Baltics. It's a different thing if it's the French, the Germans, or the British go in. They've got enough weight to pull most of NATO behind them, whether NATO likes it or not. Once the bullets start flying, the logic starts changing radically.
I don't want to be too blunt here, but I mean, won't a Russian missile kill a NATO soldier just like it kills a Ukrainian one? What's the difference?
Right.
Well, we can ask the 60 or so French soldiers in Kharkiv that got a Iskandar on their head.
Thank you for reminding our audience there. Maybe that is what got Macron all set off. I mean, he always has these triggers around him. We've gotten used to that with the French president. Daniel, you know, staying with Macron, he said essentially that Russia should not be allowed to win. I think really what he's saying is that NATO should not be allowed to lose.
Well, when I was really confused when he said that because I thought they already were winning. Isn't that what they've been saying for 2 years? It's over. They've already won. You know, I mean, I was listening, I guess, to the wrong U.S. generals who said that they'd already won. So it does smack of desperation, and you know, it's they're sending all sorts of signals. The intercepted conversation, which actually the Germans are saying today, it wasn't intercepted at all. It was basically a boomer mistake. One of the generals didn't dial in right. And so, don't blame us. We're still secure. Don't worry. They haven't heard anything we said. But these things keep leaking out, and they keep pointing in one direction, which, as you appropriately titled the show, escalation. And I just wonder, it seems like the little Baltics are just chomping at the bit to get in if this is some sort of signal for them to get more involved.
Well, Daniel, what do they actually have? I mean, NATO consists of two major militaries, the United States, which is far away. It has bases in Europe, obviously. And there's Turkey. Turkey's not going to get involved in this whatsoever. So what is left? I mean, what should Russia be worried about?
Well, it's desperation because we're moving it now. With every day, it becomes clearer and clearer. And this is particularly true yesterday when the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, states, you can't kick a guy off the ballot because you don't like him. It's becoming clearer and clearer that Trump will be the nominee, and the numbers are certainly his way when you look at national polls. So Trump, for all of his faults, and there are plenty of them, he, at least to this point, has not displayed an appetite for going all in. If you remember back when the so-called chemical attack in Syria happened, he lobbed a couple of bombs out into some field somewhere. He didn't go all in. So I think that is responsible for a good deal of the panic.
Yeah, well, Larry, what is NATO as a military force vis-a-vis Russia?
Well, they're nothing, to put it simply. Look, the reason NATO has expanded over the years is because that was the only way that NATO could maintain force level, force structure, because they weren't able to build up and sustain their own armies. I mean, right now, the British Army, I think its full strength is 70,000. And of that, if you wanted to call anybody combat capable, you're looking maybe at 30,000. Well, the Russians are chewing through that in 2 weeks. Ditto, the French army has similar challenges, as do the Germans. So across the board, you wind up with this patchwork quilt of different military capabilities, different military traditions, different military organizations. They try to standardize it. And the line that's been coming out of Washington is, oh, boy, NATO's more united than ever. Well, that that meme has sort of gone away, particularly with Macron and Scholz in an ultimate catfight with each other, and the Brits, they're very unhappy with the Germans as well because Scholz outed them as that they're active and on the ground in Ukraine.
Well, I think you could make an argument, Stanislav, that the French and the British always are upset with the Germans. It's just a historical thing, okay? But, I mean, it's interesting, Stanislav, given the scope of our conversation so far, I think the blame game has already started. What do you think?
Well, this kind of reminds me of Obama's No Child Left Behind program for the American schools, when they just lowered the standards so low you couldn't leave anybody behind because anybody could step over. NATO integration's gone about the same way. We've lowered the standards so low that Latvia or Estonia looks like a military power. On the other hand, to be honest, there are enough military units there that if they start a fight, it's going to be a fight. There are going to be losses on both sides. It's not going to be over in a week. It'll be over. It'll be over in only one direction, unless some miracle happens for NATO. But it's still going to be a fight. It's still going to be a war. So we shouldn't downgrade it totally as if there's not going to have anything to do with it.
Well, I mean, but Stanislav, you being knowing the military, I mean, if you're going to have air support, does NATO have air support in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine? If it's outside of Ukraine, isn't that a fair target?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, the way they're doing it is the planes are hiding mostly in Poland. They fly out of Poland, they land in Ukraine on a Ukrainian air base, they fuel up, arm up, and then fly a mission. So right now, Russia's kind of ignoring that, and they're not hitting them in Poland. Now, the problem with F-16s is, A, they are made for asphalt tarmacs. They're not made for concrete tarmacs, the way the Soviet and Russian planes are made for. Two, for them to land on a concrete tarmac, they have to carry a lot less weight. Otherwise, they'll break their chassis. They'll break their landing gear. So for that matter, that means that's a lot more of a constrained mission because you got less fuel, less ordnance. Now, if they're flying out of Poland, and it's already been said, and I hope that's the line that's held, if they're flying out of Poland and going straight into a combat mission, those Polish air bases are part of the fight. And if they're part of the fight, they're a legal and moral target to be hit. So
you summed it up. They're a target here. Gentlemen, we have to go to a hard break, and after that hard break, we'll continue our discussion on Ukraine. Stay with RT.
results seem wrong, when old rules just don't hold, and a new world is yet to shape out, disdain becomes the etiquette, and engagement equals betrayal. When so many find themselves worlds apart, we choose to look for common ground.
We need to counter the Russian state-controlled narrative.
Als Teil der Sanktionen gegen Russland gehen die westlichen Länder gegen russische Auslandssender vor.
Mais écoutez, monsieur, c'est pas à vous de décider de qui est journaliste ou pas dans ce pays. On est en France, quoi. C'est pas possible.
We will ban in the European Union the Kremlin's media machine. The state-owned Russia Today and Sputnik.
RT, Sputnik, even our video agency, Roughly, all banned on YouTube.
Et merci à vous tous pour votre fidélité et votre soutien.
Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. To remind you, we're discussing Ukraine. Okay, let's go back to Daniel and Lake Jackson. The American angle in all of this is, of course, the aid that the Senate passed, the House and refuses even to discuss at this point here. Will there be a go-around? Will there be eventually some kind of aid still going to Ukraine? Vis-a-vis, I was going to mention Marco Rubio, but given that kind of illogic coming from Marco Rubio, some money will eventually get there because it's Biden's prestige on the line.
Yeah, I think with every passing day, it's less likely they'll get the full enchilada sent to them, the $61 billion. But again, we're moving heavily now into the election season. Trump has all but captured the nomination as the Republican, and he's essentially the head of the Republican Party in the United States now. And so you have a Republican House that literally hangs within a hair's breadth of a majority. They kicked out a Republican because he was a weirdo, and now they have basically, one or two guys. So it's very important that the Republican House at least aligns itself with President Trump, and I think that's what they want to do, despite the misgivings among some, shall we say, more rhino or backbencher type Republicans. So with every day, there's more of a danger that it won't pass. But there needs, as you say, needs to be something that will pass. And Speaker Johnson is not ideologically opposed or opposed in principle to sending money to Ukraine.
Well, he voted for money in the past, okay? I mean, he was on board for that.
He has in the past, but now there's basically the standoff about immigration. And so the Republicans, in a way, have used this as a whip against the Democrats and President Biden. We need a serious immigration bill, or we're not going to pass the money. So it's kind of a challenge, a gauntlet being thrown down now. And the Democrats can't afford to back off on immigration now. They've already lost, states like Michigan. To Biden has lost that because he decided to align completely with Israel, and that's another story. So you're really having something that's going on in the political sphere now that goes well beyond war fighting.
Yeah, Larry, I'm sure you saw Lloyd Austin's testimony to Congress. I don't know what, maybe he's just recovering from his surgery because this guy was so delusional, the scaremongering. I mean, it was so transparent as well. Again, desperation in the air. Larry.
Well, they're trying to do everything they can to put pressure on Congress to cough up the money, speaking of coughing. And here's the issue. There is not the kind of political base in the United States for Ukraine that exists for Israel. So, the theme song for Congress ought to be that from the movie Cabaret, money, 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 money. The money makes the world go round. So I do think Congress ultimately will allocate, they will approve funds for, quote, Ukraine. But the reality of that money is not going to Ukraine. It's going to General Dynamics. It's going to Raytheon. It's going to Lockheed Martin. It's staying in the United States. And then it's getting passed back to the members of Congress who are going to need to have some cash in their election coffers coming up for November. So, I mean, it's a scam. And at the same time, the United States is under great pressure from the American-Israeli Political Action Committee to pony up the funds to keep Israel in the fight. And so the United States does not have limitless military capability. They've got to make choices. And so their choices in that is they're going to send whatever equipment, materiel, munitions to Israel, not to Ukraine. Ukraine's toast.
Yeah, well, Stanislav, it's very interesting there. It gets down to legal requirements to send money to Ukraine, but there's no barriers to send it to Israel. Congress, I think, has already been overridden twice by this administration. Stanislav, I have a kind of a military question for you. I mean, it's one of these things, going back to what Macron had to say, and I don't know, maybe he's just wanting to remain relevant. You know, he wants to outdo the Germans and the Brits. I don't know. There could be an internal dynamic there. But there's this sense, you know, if NATO send troops to Ukraine, the Russians won't dare touch them. That is ridiculous thinking. Stanislav.
Yeah, you know, when you're in a proxy war, you've got one of two choices when you're losing. Either leave or you double down. And it seems NATO, the problem with a lot of NATO leadership, too, is they're in an echo chamber. They hear the same thing back. They talk the same words. They speak the same words. They hear the same thing back and forth. And they keep hearing how Russia is just on the brink, just a little more, and it'll finally crack. It's the same thing as when you go to Vegas and you put your kids' your college funds on the line, the house, the wife's wedding ring, and just one win, and I'll get it all back. But you're not going to get it all back. You're just going to get a little further broke. And you're looking basically gambling addicts. They've put everything on the line, short of their own countries. And they're willing to do that, too.
Well Stanislav, if I can use the metaphor, so I like the Vegas metaphor, so the Ukrainians are the chips, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole war is just this big roulette table spinning, and they're losing. The house wins, and they're not the house, as much as they want to think they're the house.
Daniel, really the desperation that you see coming out of the Europeans is that NATO is facing a strategic defeat, and that's something they simply can't comprehend, can they? Daniel.
No, they can't at all, and that's why you see bizarre things like German generals talking behind the backs of their commander-in-chief, who says, no Tauruses. And then you have this leaked conversation. How many Tauruses will it take to nuke the bridge? But I wanted to pick up on something that Stanislav said, because he makes an excellent point. And it reminds me so much that we have learned nothing from Iraq. Because I remember when I was working in the House with Dr. Paul, endless Foreign Affairs Committee hearings with Fred Kagan waddling in there, sitting down and telling us, just one more surge, guys, just one more surge. We've almost got this thing won, for both Iraq and Afghanistan, by the way. So this is the garbage that they've pulled all along. They haven't learned from it because they profit from it. But picking up on something that Larry said as well, if you look at the opinion polls in the U.S., not only is aid to Ukraine extremely unpopular, particularly among Republicans, I think it's something like 75%, but certainly in the mid to high 60s overall oppose it, but even more aid to Israel. Surprisingly enough, at least the last poll I saw, 59% of Republicans are opposed to more military aid to Israel. So these wars are extremely unpopular. I can't help but think that Republicans and past and potentially future President Trump aren't looking at these polls.
You know, Larry, one of the interesting things in listening to probably the woman that we probably all agreed should be demonized the most is Victoria Nuland. And she said twice, when she was in Kiev and then later at a conference, is that there'll be some surprises for Putin, as she likes to say. It seems to me, considering the leaked German conversation, it's terrorism that they're going to conduct. That's what the surprises are. Terrorist acts against civilians. Larry.
Well, yes, but Russia is, I think, aware and prepared for it. You know, this series of incidents this last week, where you first had the statement from Macron, escalating. And at that same time, it came out with the New York Times article about CIA bases in Ukraine and all the stuff that the CIA was doing to support the Ukrainian war. And then you had Putin's speech, his State of the Union, State of Russia, and within it putting down some very clear markers about what the West is facing if they continue this. And then the leak, and I do believe the leak came from Russian intelligence. That was not accidental. They're putting the West on notice. Okay, you've played this game now for over 2 years of of inserting yourselves into this war but pretending that you're not there. That's right. Of killing Russians and not taking responsibility. That's over. And in fact, we had a news report just the other day, I think day before yesterday. It looks like the Russians did hit one of the CIA bases around Sumy and kill the personnel. And nobody said anything about it. They want to keep that under wraps. But I think the Russians have now made the decision. Okay, the gloves in that respect are coming off. If the NATO forces continue to insert themselves this way, we will hit them, and we will make them pay.
As Stanislav, essentially the same question here. I mean, NATO has overplayed its hand. As a matter of fact, if you really think about it, NATO really never expected a long-term conflict. They believed in the fantasy that the Russian troops went up to Kiev and then they ran away and, they could call victory. Boris Johnson called it off. And now they're stuck with the hand that they dealt themselves. Stanislav.
Yeah, Kharkov too, the essential thing. The Ukrainians used flying columns. No strong point was ever taken. Our neighbor's son was fighting in one of those strong points. They got encircled. They got pulled out by relief troops, and they stepped back. But they stepped back in an orderly manner. Continued lines that were a flexible defense. So they were falling back on new lines, until they got down to a hardened line that the Ukrainians couldn't push through. The other thing that nobody talks about is Ukraine had an armored fist that it created with several brigades, and it kept them in Kharkov around civilians, knowing that the civilians aren't going to get hit. That they're parked in underground garages, areas like that, knowing that Russia isn't going to hit those buildings. They're not going to do a Gaza on Kharkov. Well, that armored fist had to come out for this fight, and they lost a good chunk of that armored fist. So that had been put together for a while. As far as terrorism, let's start 2014. You can ask my elderly aunt in Yasinovatov, who's been 9 years under shelling. I went, last time I saw her was in November. We came flying in there at 140 kilometers an hour through a bombed up road. You can't go slower than that. You've got drones overhead that are bringing in artillery rounds on civilian cars. You've got drones that are kamikaze drones, FVPs, flying all over the place. So you got to fly in fast just to get into the town. And then, they get artillery constantly. I was standing there talking with my uncle, and you can hear the artillery rounds coming in. I served long enough that if I'm going to have an artillery round landing on my head, welcome Jesus. It's kind of that moment. I'm not going to worry about it coming down on top of my head. That's how all the people live there too. 9 years they've been getting artillery.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because it's never enough said that this war has been going on since 2014, and the people of the Donbass were terrorized for 8 of those years. And it's something that they will never forget, and the Russian people will never forget, and the Russian political elite will never forgive the deceit that the West conducted itself around the Minsk agreements. That's all the time we have, gentlemen. I want to thank my guests in Tampa, Lake Jackson, and in Moscow. And of course, I want to thank our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. Remember, crosstalk rules.